And welcome to Magic Numbers. And it's this week of the format cycle. We have guests today, and it's a special episode when we're going to be doing the Bloomburrow draft archetype skeleton discussion. And before we go, very quickly, thanks to my patrons, and I wanted to mention because I forgot last week and I feel super guilty about it. I forgot that Feynman's homeboy became my new patron, and I didn't give them a shout out last week, so I do it now. Thanks to MTJs on whatever. Let's move on with the stuff. So, as always, the skeleton crew is based on multiple people trying their strength in building archetype skeletons in the new format before any kind of contact with the cards. And today we have Adam. Hi, Adam. Could you tell a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. So I've been playing Magic for a while, took a break, came back with COVID. Excited. I've owned bunnies and dogs and things like that, so this feels like a set meant for me. So I'm ready to jump on in.
Yeah, the secret of Adam is he's also my Lorcana advisor for some reason that is arcane to both of us, I think. We also have Jason ILTG. Jason, a couple of words about yourself. You can just sum up the wins from the last week. No problem.
I play Magic. Apparently, I'm pretty good at it. I've been doing well competitively. I barely prepared today, so hopefully that won't be too much of an issue. But glad to be here as always.
Don't worry, no matter how many prototypes you make for us, you'll be always the mastermind behind Imperial Oath's success in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. So that's written in stone for us. We also have Springbok 7.
Hi. I play a lot of limited. that's the main thing about me. I love playing Magic and constructing decks.
There we go. What else do you need? And currently not online, but at a certain stage, we're going to have a swap, and we're going to have also Trezio, who is actually one of my patrons and was brave enough to ask to join. You might know Trezio from multiple questions of the week that they asked during the Magic Numbers regular episode. So we're going to learn about Trezio when we move to the skeletons part. But I have to say, they did a lot of help with the prep for the presentation because Jason already humbled themselves and told they didn't do much prep. Well, I didn't do much either because I'm in the middle of submitting a grant proposal, and that occupied my last roughly 71 out of the last 72 hours. 1 hour I dedicated to sleeping. So yeah, bear that in mind. And thanks to everyone that pulled their weight, including Trezio, Adam, and Springbok especially, who prepared the slides. And with that, we can move on to the actual topic. So first of all, if you never heard this stream before, if you never watched our merry ramblings, you might want to wonder, what are the skeletons? There's no skeletons, it's only animals in the set. No zombies or whatever. Well, skeleton is actually a sort of functional deck that is built based on certain principles. Our principles are quite simple. We have like between 0 and 2 rares and mythics without duplication, between 0 and 8 uncommons without duplication, and we fill it up with commons, max 2 of each, and add some basic lands. Non-basic lands also are having the same limit as other cards of the same rarity. And based on that, we try to build decks, and it's not always an attempt to build the best possible physically deck. Sometimes the skeleton building is an exercise in showcasing what you are interested in doing in this particular color combination. Sometimes you build a skeleton because you're a contrarian and just want to show that you can do something different than the design team is trying to tell you to do. I'm looking at you, Jason. And sometimes you just want to recreate what the design team wants us to do and show either a successful version of it or actually maybe point to the fact that it's not going to be easy to achieve what the design team is trying to show us. And the whole point of this exercise is to accustom yourself with the set, is to think about card synergies. It's to think about the set instead of grading cards in vacuum like it often is being done in the set review. Try to grade those cards in the environment that they will be naturally encountered in the limited of this format. So along with other cards that try to synergize with them or actually don't synergize with them. And big shout out to sealeddeck.tech. This is the website that, well, basically the creators have dedicated a lot of effort and listened to a lot of comments from all the limited players to build a perfect tool for building sealed decks. But it also has a special part of the site where you can easily build those archetype skeletons because you have all the cards from the set. You can sort them by color, by rarity, by mana value, and you can build your archetype skeletons relatively easily if you have a decently sized screen. So that's what we were using, and that's what we recommend to use. And a big shout out to them for being so receptive to what the community wants to do. As always, I invited the guests so that they can sit aimlessly and watch me talk for the first 15 to 20 minutes, because usually we start with an introduction to the format. Before we dive into the decks that we build, we want to give a nice overview. And it so happens that the first part of this overview, since the times when it was still being held on Sander Kirsten's Twitch channel, was me talking about the removal and especially the damage removal and conditional removal, how it aligns with the creature sizing in the set. So in the set, we have a couple of levels of removal. We have 1 damage spell, Playful Shove. That's 2 mana for deal 1 damage and draw a card. It can deal damage to any target. And actually, it doesn't hit that much. It hits 14% of common creatures and 23% of the uncommons and only 9% of the rares, which is slightly below rate for this type of removal in other sets. Not by much, but slightly below rate. But what this statistic doesn't show you is token generation. And I don't know how unprecedented it is, but there are 25 types of tokens in the set, mainly thanks to the offspring mechanic, which always generates 1/1 token, and they have a different type. But out of those 25 types of creature tokens, 24 of them are 1/1s. So Playful Shove can deal quite proficiently with any kind of creature token. The only exception is an O for wall, which Playful Shove cannot kill because you can't shove a wall lethally. At least you can to give a couple of shoves, 4 to be precise. Then we have Savor, and there's a couple of other spells that can deal 2 damage. Important part, they kill roughly half of the common creatures. Savor is 2 mana, instant speed, give -2/-2 to target creature, and you make a food token. So sort of disfigure with food token attached to it. 50% is basically what you would expect in any other set. But of course, on top of that, it will kill all those 1/1 tokens that are not calculated in the in this statistic. And also, -2/-2 does not necessarily have to be used as a removal. It can be used also as a sort of reverse version of a combat trick. And we're going to talk a bit about it, but the creature sizing in this set is particular, which makes me think Savor might be a very good card. It also kills 53% of uncommons, which means that those slightly higher rarity cards are similarly sized actually to the commons, which is also relatively uncommon in other sets. Normally you have fewer small creatures at uncommon level. There is quite a lot of those small creatures at uncommon, and 30% of rare mythics. That's roughly normal. Then we have Take Out the Trash, which is the only really spell that deals 3 damage. 2 mana for an instant, deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If you control a raccoon, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card, which is a great bonus to have when you have raccoons. It turns into a sort of better version of Fire Prophecy. Different version of Fire Prophecy. It allows you to get rid of any card, and you draw something you fill in your graveyard, which might be relevant at some stages. This kills 80% of the common creatures, which is actually more than you normally will do. That's quite high for that 3 damage spell at common to kill 80% of the creatures. Then it also kills like 3/4 of uncommon creatures and around 2/3 of rares and mythics, which is again more than you would normally get. So the sizing of the creatures in the set is slightly smaller. There are fewer big things in the set. Then we have Sonar Strike, one of the spells that can deal 4 damage. does kill 96% of creatures at common without any modifications. So that's a lot. That's, again, more than you would normally expect. Also 90% of the uncommon creatures, around 83% of the rare and mythic creatures. So Summer Strike is 1 and a white for an instant. It deals 4 damage to target attacking, blocking, or tapped creature, and you gain 3 life if you control a bat. So another sort of removal that gives you an extra bonus when you can fulfill the typal requirements of it, which is quite neat. Then we don't have a 5 damage spell, so I just gave an example of Wix Patrol, which technically can give -5/-5 to something. It's a 4 black for a 5/3 creature, and when it enters, you mill 3 cards. When you do, target creature an opponent controls gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the greatest mana value among the cards in your graveyard. So technically, you can have a 5-drop in there, and it can give -5/-5. Not really that important. Important is that 5 damage will kill every single common creature. It will kill 96% of uncommons and 94% of rares. There are literally only 6, I think, creatures that have toughness greater than 4 and than 5, and they all have toughness of 6. So no 7/7s, no 8/8s, no 9/9s, nothing super big in the set. 6 is the absolute ceiling, and it doesn't even exist at common. So pretty small set in terms of creature sizings. I mean, it's not exactly Segovia, but not far off in terms of comparison with the other set. And weirdly, for that reason, there is a red spell that deals 6 damage, which technically you can pump 6 toughness creature and save it from this, so it's not an unconditional removal, but this is as close as to an unconditional removal as you can get. It conduct electricity as a 4 and a red for an instant. It deals 6 damage to target creature and 2 damage to up to 1 target creature token. And as I said, 25 types of tokens, 24 of them die to a shock. So it comfortably kills any kind of token if opponent has them. If they don't, then you don't need to pick a target. So this is the kind of a clunky red removal, but who knows, maybe as a sideboard card or maybe as a one-off in the best of one, it can get some play. There is not much conditional removal either. One that looks potentially playable is Repel Calamity. And since last time I made a mistake in the Scryfall formula and I had a bloody wrong graph, this time I triple-checked it, and I know that I have a good one. Repel Calamity is 1 and a white for an instant. Destroy target creature with power or toughness 4 or greater. It does kill around a quarter of common creatures, around a third of uncommons, and 37% of rares and mythics. So it does hit something, and it hits impactful things, and it costs only 2 mana. So I think that potentially it's playable as a one-off. Creature sizings are small, which means that there is a good chance that combat tricks are going to be used extensively, which gives the Repel Calamity opportunity to 2-for-1 opponents if they decide to go for a combat trick. I definitely wouldn't play 2, but I think 1 can find its way to a deck, especially when you have some kind of a rummage or loot effect in them. And the other conditional removal that I found is Poppage Formation. 1 and a green for an instant, and you have 3 modes. You can destroy a creature with flying, you can destroy target enchantment, or you can draw a card and create a food token, which is like a neat way of cycling it and getting something extra for that. And there is 18% of flying creatures at common, 15 at uncommon, 15 at rare or mythic, 15% at rare or mythic, which gives it some targets. There is always the cycling mode, so it might see some play. I put it in one of my decks because making food is something that doesn't happen that easily, naturally in this set. And having also, there are several potentially impactful enchantments that you want to be hunting for that are not, of course, included in those statistics. So card looks interesting, but it remains to be seen if it's actually playable, or it's just my Magic Christmas Land mentality that wants to see it being good. What else do we have? We have really a handful of sweepers. Starfall Invocation Rook's pretty much busted. It's 5 mana Wrath, destroy creatures, but it has a gift ability. Gift ability allows you to donate something to your opponent, and then you get an extra effect on your spell. So it's a sort of like a kicker where you kick by giving some small advantage to your opponent, and you have to decide whether this small advantage is covered by the extra effect or not. Starfall Invocation has a pretty neat additional effect. If you gift a card, which means that opponent is allowed to draw an extra card when you cast that spell, you can return a creature that was killed by this Wrath spell and return it to the battlefield under your control. Mind, you can choose opponent's creature. So if you Wrath, they have something really big, you just take it, put it on the battlefield, and they can draw an extra card and be probably quite miserable about it. So that looks like a pretty busted card. I don't know if there is going to be a deck that wants to have it. That's another question, but it looks powerful. Yeah, it has to have been put.
Yeah, Mike is right. It says you have to be a creature that you controlled, or
Okay.
that was put into your graveyard. Yeah.
That's a weird wording then.
No, pretty unplayable.
Why do you specify that it's under your control? Okay, so you can only take your creature. Well, still, that's a pretty good thing that you can get the creature back. But I think I have an idea of the card in the next set that will be absolutely busted. Then we have a Pseudo Sweeper in Season of Loss. That's 3 black for a sorcery, and you got 5 paws. Why 5? I don't know. Someone explain me biology of Bloomburrow, but allegedly every season has 5 paws. You got 5 paws worth of modes, and you may choose out of those modes. They have different costs, and the first mode costs 1 paw, and it says each player sacrifices a creature. So technically, you can choose that mode 5 times, and every player sacrifices creature 5 times. So that should, in most scenarios, Wrath the board. Not in every single scenario. Maybe you can build this situation when they have 5 creatures, you have 7, make them sacrifice everything, you keep 2 of your best things on board, and happy times. There are other options. For 2 paws, you can draw a card for each creature you controlled that died this turn. So you can make people sacrifice 3 creatures each and then draw 3 cards yourself. Or you can pay 3 paws for a mode that says each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So technically, it's a sweeper. That's why I included it. And also because there's so few of them that I might as well add 1 extra. And there is a mini sweeper in Wildfire Howl. 1 red for a sorcery. This is another gift card. You can gift a card as you cast it. And there's Wildfire Howl deals 2 damage to each creature. So it will kill roughly 50% of commons and uncommons that are in the set. But when a gift was promised, instead, it deals 1 damage to any target and 2 damage to each creature. So you can give opponent a card to additionally kill a particularly juicy target with 3 toughness. That might break some kind of a stall of this card and give you an advantage. Also, you can technically point that 1 damage to the face if you have lethal through that. So that's another thing that the card has in its range. Now, for the creature sizing, as I told you, only 14% of the creatures with 1 toughness is on the low side. MH3 had 29% of creatures at common were killed by an X1 spell, which was actually a record. So we have 2 sets that are on the opposite sides of the spectrum here. But normally you would expect something like between 20 and 25% of creatures being killed by a 1 damage spell at common, at least. Then 2 damage kills 49% of the creature. That's sort of average result. There is a pretty consistent numbers in terms of how many creatures are there. There were a couple of sets that were approaching 55%. Most sets approach around 50%, and Bloomburrow is one of those. When we look at the things that are killed with a 3 damage spell, 80% is equal to MH3 and Wilds of Eldraine as the most creatures being killed by 3 damage spell. And if you remember, 3 damage spells in MH3 and in Wilds of Eldraine were pretty good in both of those sets. So hopefully that means that the Raccoon Trash 3 damage removal is going to be a really solid card in the set, and it looks to me like one of the better commons actually. And it actually is 96% of creatures killed by 4 damage spell at common is the highest number that we had in the recent sets. Not by much, but some recent sets like Murders or LCI, only 85% of the creatures died from a 4 damage spell. Right, we lost Jason for a second, but it's back, baby. Okay. When you look at it, you see that 1 damage spells kill quite little compared to other sets. On the other hand, 4 damage spell kills quite a lot. And this made me return to the graph I made for OTJ, because OTJ was the set with weird creature sizing where around 80% of the creatures were having toughness between 2 and 4. And this was an outlier already then, because most sets have around 65% of creatures in that sizing. And there were some exceptions like Kaldheim at 74. Bloomburrow is 81.6 compared to the OTJ 78.4. So it beat the record of OTJ. It's even a higher outlier. And more than 80% of the creatures, at common at least, are between this 2 and 4 toughness kind of range, which is very narrow. And that, I think, will have ramifications on how the format plays, because the sizings are so close to each other. All right, and that sort of concludes my part about creature sizing. Any thoughts, Skeleton Crew?
Yeah, I think combat's going to be important in this set, especially compared to a couple of the last sets. So whether that means you have to have your tricks up or answers to tricks, or just find ways to leverage, double, triple blocking and things like that. But yeah, probably some micro advantages, and just trying not to let your opponent snowball on you. So getting on board. For like initial thoughts.
Yeah, I think the chat also has a good thought that it's probably a bit misleading because of Offspring and those 1/1 tokens that are quite predominant. And that's true, but I never count tokens, and there's always a plethora of them existing in the format.
I think it's also just less likely that your 3 or 4 drop is going to get blanked by your opponent's playing by your opponent's creatures on turn 5 or 6. So they're much more likely to be able to attack.
Yeah, that's true. There is no, I mean, there's a couple of them, but it's not like a Lindworm, Honey Mammoth kind of format where you just play your game, disappears, and you're completely blanked out of the game.
Yeah,
it's nothing like that at common.
There's also at common one card that has really been on my mind is the Intrepid Rabbit, which really helps you push through combat, right? It just lets you get your numbers to where they need to be.
Is that the upgraded version of a 3/2 brings a 1/1, and then there is the +1/+1 effect from either of those? Yep.
Yeah, it's the 3/2 with ETB +1/+1 to something that also has Offspring 1.
Yeah. Okay, are we ready to move on to your slides as opposed to my sizing ramifications? Yeah, so sure. I don't know who wants to talk about which part, but I'm out because you made them, and I will listen gladly what you have to say.
Yeah, I can jump in, but Springbok, feel free to at the slide that you want to tackle, just let me know, and we can just kind of go from there. And we oftentimes open these up to conversations, between the group as well. So yeah, Mike mentioned Offspring, so yeah, we'll start there. So this is a mechanic. You can kind of see it on the cards, but basically there's a cost associated with it. Many times it's 1 to 3 generic mana. In some cases where it may be a more backbreaking effect, like in the Splash Lasher, the blue one, second from the left. There is like a colored pip in the offspring cost, and when you pay the offspring cost, you get a copy of the card. It's a token, comes in as a 1/1, and that's pretty useful because the majority of these cards that have offspring on them have an enters the battlefield, as you used to call it, effect. Some of them have an effect on attacks or on death, but the majority of them are on enters. So having a 1/1 may affect your board a little bit, but you're ideally adding that presence, that token on the board to get whatever the effect is. And sometimes they can be pretty substantial. Sometimes they're just kind of minor, but I see this as kind of like a mana sink in some ways. You can play these early. If you draw it later and you have the mana available, you can play it later and pay the offspring cost and get the effect twice, add to your board a little bit more. They are across all colors. So when we're talking about these like initial mechanics or themes, we're not going to talk about the ones that are focused to like a color pair. We'll talk about those when we talk about the color pairs and the deck shells themselves. But this is across all colors. There are 16 of them across all rarities as well. And it seems like it's a pretty good way to use mana, set that only has a couple ways to do that, whether it's like classes we'll talk about next or offspring. And it gives you optionality, which I think for the stronger players, having options and being able to fit stuff in at different points in the game can be really useful. So I think these will generally play above what they look at because it's a way to use mana later in the game and early in the game. And we do have a self-balanced archetype. We'll look at blue-green and maybe able to take advantage of some of the cards that are in those colors, or like an easy splash, like 2 colors plus a splash. So like the Bushy Bodyguard or Splash Lasher on this page, on this slide, maybe look a little stronger because they're in that color pair that might be able to balance them back if you played it early and then play it again late with Offspring. So I don't know if people have other perceptions on Offspring, but that's my initial take on it.
So the thing I want to point out with Offspring is that because there's just like naturally more things that make 1/1 tokens in the set, that'll probably make like X1s that you're trying to attack with on the ground slightly worse, and also like menace becomes slightly worse. Just like the board gets like, just think about how you're interacting with an X1.
Yeah.
There's also Pond Profit as another random like 1/1 for little cost in the set. So X1s might be slightly worse.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, your trample, your flying probably goes up a little bit because I think maybe one of these is flying, but I think none of them that have Offspring have flying. So you're adding to the ground where it might get gummed up a little bit. So
there's a 3 mana 2/2 with flying that.
Oh yeah, the one that taps stuff. Yeah, one of the blue
that has
ones.
Offspring 3.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of mana, but
Yes.
There's also a piece of trivia that Offspring is the reason why this set doesn't have any sacrifice outlets, because the design team thought that sacrificing babies would be heartbreaking for too many players, so they didn't put and they would be, of course, the natural thing to sacrifice if you have a 1/1 token lying around.
Instead, there's a lot of cards that suggest a flavor of eating babies.
Yeah.
Eating is fine.
I mean, yeah.
That's sustenance. Yeah.
My favorite one is the Coyote, the 3 white, like exile something, and if it's power 2 or less, which often will be an offspring, like you often want to target an offspring with that, then it gets a counter. So it gets better if you eat a baby with it.
Yeah. Calling the herd. Yeah. So I think Offspring will be pretty good. If it's in your color pair, you'll probably be drafting these a little higher. If it's a reasonable splash and you think you can support it, then I think you can. We'll talk about fixing and how much we believe or don't believe in splashing or 2 color splash versus 4 or 5 color decks in a couple slides. But I think these will probably be pretty strong cards compared to, other cards at similar mana values.
Yeah, it would be a very good data test for what exactly constitutes a good creature with 2 bodies entering and what constitutes a bad creature with 2 bodies entering.
Yeah. I imagine there will be a question at week 4 or 5 for you, Circovitz, about how many times Offspring's being paid on these cards and how that affects win rate and stuff like that. So get ready for that question from Tresio.
Not looking forward to that analysis specifically. Okay, shall we move to the next mechanic?
Yeah, sure.
We have the talents.
Yeah, so this is return from those who suffered through AFR 3 years ago.
Hey, AFR was completely fine.
It was fun. It was okay.
It was actually I enjoyed it, but I've enjoyed many more sets since then. But yeah, so these are classes. There's 10 of them. 5 are uncommon, 5 are rare across all the color pairs. And it looks like a saga, but it does play differently. So there's an effect, something occurs whenever you play the card, and then you can level it up. So you can put some amount of mana. Generally it's 1 to 3 mana on the cards to get another effect that brings you up from the base to level 1, and you can pay more mana. On the ones on the screen, you'll generally see 4 mana across the board to get a third effect. And oftentimes this is like a static effect. Something that will continue to occur. If you have something that meets the criteria, you'll get some benefit. So again, this is another mana sink, kind of like we saw with Offspring. They do, generally speaking, align with whatever a color pair is trying to do. So with 10 classes, more or less, like you're having them line up with particular color pairs. Not to say you can't play Hidden, Hunter's Talent in any green deck. It would probably be good to very good. But some might be a bit better fits, like the Blacksmith's Talent would probably like to be in a white-red deck where you're using your equipment to target your creatures to get your Valiant triggers, as an example. Yeah, so they're pretty neat, and there is some incidental enchantment removal. So if you spend all this mana just to have this little 2-drop, snipe your class for 1 mana, that might be a feels bad, and that 2-drop will probably be playable to very playable as an aggressive 2-drop in a color that's probably going to be on the more aggressive side in this set. But there's not too much other incidental enchantment removal. Circovitz talked about the green card that can destroy like an enchantment artifact or make a food and draw a card. And then this 2-drop, I think that's probably close
There's
to
also
it.
a 5 mana black removal spell that makes your opponent enchantment.
Yep. Yeah, and then is the green 5-drop the uncommon one? Does that get enchantments also? I can't remember. Or is that artifact?
Yeah.
There's a few other things, yeah. But yeah, I think that...
yeah, that does also get enchantments.
It does? Okay, yeah. So will be kind of a feels bad when it happens, because that's probably a pretty good card. But yeah, so we'll look at our deck shelves to see how often these talents come up, but just being aware that there are ways to sink your mana into the mid to late game. These do exist, and they may fit into a particular color pair to where you might get it a little later, and you might be able to kind of make it happen with a few of these.
Yeah, so ideally with most of these, like, you want to have gotten some, like, the good ones are the ones that, like, you get something, like, when you play it, and, like, the leveling up is, like, a bonus that is probably going to be good in the late game, but you're probably not too sad by them getting disenchanted usually, right? Like, the green one is just a bite, right? Like, it's a bite that gives you, like, so much value, and, like, yeah, they can disenchant it, but you didn't, like, you didn't spend a card to get the, like, level 2 or level 3, you just spent more mana, right?
Yeah, leave something along, like you get an 0-4, or you get like an equipment with like a white or a red one. You may have something that still hangs around. Yeah.
Then some of them are the blue one and are unplayable.
Yeah. To note, you do have to use the mana on your turn, so it's something you do as sorcery speed. Yeah, so you can't necessarily hold it up and end the turn. Level it up once or twice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're interesting, and we'll figure out if they are good enough to be a build around in some cases, and some of them will be just straightforward good. Like Hunter's Talent is just decent. Green ones, I think, are generally good.
Yeah.
And the rest is more situational, and will require some crafting, I guess, to get them working.
I thought Builder's Talent was the best one.
Well, let's not spoil.
I look forward to seeing someone's deck with that. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a good deck. I'm saying it's a deck. Okay. I just wanted to do something different. Damn it.
No, I like that. That's fun. Yeah. So those are talents.
We'll probably get to this more when we get to red-green, but like the talents are also good mana sinks for expend creatures.
That's not true. Expend only.
Oh, is it only spells?
Yeah, it's only spells. Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah.
It is a weird mechanic, but you have to cast spells, so
and that's probably good with like the equipment and other ways you can spend your mana foods and stuff like that. So it's probably good that that's not the case in this set. Yeah. So giving a gift, So this is something that's tacked on to 22 cards across all the colors. We put some of the common examples here. And when you give a gift, you promise your opponent that they will either, get a card or a food or a tapped 1/1 fish or a treasure, depending on whatever the gift that is given says on the card. So like you'll see in the middle, Nocturnal Hunger, you could pay 2 and a black to destroy target creature. And if you gave your opponent a food, you would not lose 2 life. If you did not give them a food, you would lose 2 life. So you'll probably be able to figure out during, like, looking at the game state, looking at the board, planning the next 1 or 2 turns, whether it's worth it or not to give your opponent a gift. So that'll be more game decision. But I'd say generally speaking, your mode will probably be don't give a gift the majority of the time, and then there'll be instances where you do find that it is strategically beneficial to give them a gift. It's kind of my read on most of the cards. Yeah. So that can kind of change. And then there is I guess I'll say Builder Ale, but I'm not sure if I'll have the stomach to try it. This Jolly Gerbils, that when you give a gift, you do get to draw a card. So maybe it's a way to, have the gift dot deck, and you've just got 10 of these cards with gift, and you've got 3 gerbils, and you just go to town. But I didn't build that deck today, and maybe you'll see it at some point. But
yeah,
but
that's interesting how the card is going to play. It's good just as a 2/3 vanilla, and that sometimes you can draw a card. I guess it's a nice bonus.
Yeah, I will say
maybe I should build that right now.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I mean there's enough fixing. We're coming to the fixing soon. There's enough fixing to make that work.
I feel like this set is pretty low fixing. Is my
So I think, I mean, we can talk about it. So I think most decks will be 2 colors with minimal to no splash. So I think the fixing that does exist will probably not be gobbled up early like it might otherwise in a set where there's probably many incentives to play, very good splash cards or play 4 or 5 color soup. So I think the fixing that's there that is good enough will probably be going later than it might otherwise go in a normal set, I guess. So maybe that's my way to say that I think the fixing you'd be able to get it, I guess.
I'm just one thing I'm skeptical about this kind of 5, because 5 color fixing seems to be there. So if you want to build a 5 color soupy deck, there is an option. It's just that there are so many 2 color synergies and cards that are good when they get better with density of that synergy, that you might just not get those generically good rares that will, normally fuel those kind of 5 color decks. And that's my main worry more than the fixing itself. But I'm sure that week 3-4, we're going to be figuring that out because we'll be tired of drafting squirrels.
Yeah.
Squirrels.
Yeah. So this is mana fixing that are not lands. And you can kind of see the commons on the left. 2 are artifacts. One's a one-time Fountain Port Bell comes into play. You can choose to get a land, put it on top of your deck, a basic land, and then you can sack the bell for 1 to draw a card, which will be drawing that land if you put the land on top. Otherwise, it can be 2 mana split up in 1/1 to just cycle the bell, basically. Get a card into your graveyard that might be used for foraging. It might just be kind of going through your deck a little quicker. It's a non-creature spell if you're doing the prowess stuff as well. We have our filtering with the 3-tree mascot. Pay 1 mana of any type to generate a mana of the type of your choice. It is a changeling, so this may make its way into many decks because it's all creature types, so it can kind of get the benefits.
Does it mean that it technically is a land?
I don't think that's a creature type, so I wouldn't.
I mean, does it have to be a named creature type in the companion rules, or can it be any word like, I don't know, toaster?
I believe it has to be a creature that's been established before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm not a judge. I think Jason, you're a L2 or L3 or something. You can probably.
I'm an L1, not an L2 or L3.
Okay. Well, you can probably confirm creature types have to be those that are established already, or.
I'm pretty sure if you have to name a creature type, you do have to choose one that exists. I'm pretty sure you cannot say I'm going to name Circovitzes. All Circovitzes get +1/+1.
Yeah, I've never tried to type Circovitz in Arena, so I'm not sure if it's in there or not. I wouldn't think so. Yeah.
That's just against me.
Yeah, you need to win the Invitational or the Worlds or whatever and get a card made, and then you're good to go. Yeah.
I know we have Circovitz.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we have some stuff in green. One's just a mana dork for 1 and a green, but it is a 1/3, so it can live through some of the hate that kind of exists, dealing damage. Not the red removal, but some of the other 1 and 2 damage removal. And then we have this kind of cute heaped harvest that I'm sure we'll see in a few different decks. That finds a land on play and on sacrifice. At uncommon, we have a coat of arms that can also be a manolith, which will probably be used more for the +1/+1 than the fixing, I would imagine, but it does have that mode. And then we have this clip top lookout that gets a land when it enters and puts it into play tapped. So it kind of ramps you and can not fix, because you're not getting to choose the land. It's just from the top of your deck once you find one, but it still is ramp. So that has its uses. And then there's some raiders that you may see. So I think it exists. And again, my perception and my attitude towards it is I probably won't be picking many of these exceptionally highly, because I don't think they're going to be on plan in most of the 2-color decks, to where I think you might be able to get them, picks, 7 to end of the pack, if you did want to try and make some craziness happen.
So, okay, some things I want to point out.
Yeah,
Fountain Port Bell is possibly I have no idea, but possibly it's a very good card in threshold decks, specifically because like it's like a land that goes to the graveyard and triggers your and enables your threshold. However, I'm not like that excited about threshold decks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed Threshold more in other sets than this one.
Yeah. Heaped Harvest probably can be good in forage decks. I'm not actually sure. I hope it is. I don't know about that. And the final thing I want to say is Patchwork Banner, I think, is just a good card. I think you should put Patchwork Banner in like all of your decks. Basically.
Yeah, when I did my filtering, I just did filter for color, so I didn't see artifacts, and I had to go back and add it into a few of them. Yeah, so like there may be some that are lower in creatures, but yeah, there will be a lot of creatures in decks, and this will help.
Okay, so think of it like this, right? Think of it like this. The card, what's it called? The fixing enchantment from like Neon Dynasty we've seen this several times. It's like 3 mana enchant land aura that's like enchanted land, like taps for 2 mana of any one color, and also it has ETB, put a counter on something.
Yeah.
Patchwork Banner is like that, because you can if you have a creature in play, you can just choose the type of that creature, but you can also you can also still get the +1/+1 for your next future creature, or you could also, and obviously you can also sometimes get like +4 out of it or something like that. Like it's just it's very good. I think
it will be nutty. You'll see a lot of mice that are looking like they're in New York, as big as they are, with this banner. Yeah.
I'm more worried about bats with that banner or something that goes in the air and has vigilance and is annoying, and now it's even bigger. Yeah, it does look pretty good actually, and there's comparisons with the Heraldic Banner, but obviously Heraldic Banner was for monocolor decks in Eldraine, which is a slightly different animal. But I think that the +1 toughness on this one is such a big game changer, especially in this set when we already talked. The sort of sizing ranges are quite narrow between the creatures, so the +1/+1 is a big change.
You know what's good with Patchwork Banner? Offspring.
Yeah,
the same
they're
type.
actually useful sizes. Yeah,
that's true.
I am a little skeptical of like ramping, just because there's no like big green payoff at uncommon, or at common, excuse me. Like there's no Lindworm type card that's going to stabilize you. So ramping for the sake of ramping may not.
But I don't think that you should treat it as ramping. You should probably treat it as an anthem that also sort of gives you mana for the one.
Oh, I was talking more about like Heaped Harvest or like the 1/3 that like makes a mana kind of cards.
Oh yeah.
Ramping for the sake of ramping isn't like there just isn't that. If you have multiple Mies, then it might be good. But
yeah, I my Heaped Harvest will probably get the one island in my deck so I can play the draw 3 later on. Is what it will probably do for me in my black-green deck.
I think like probably where you would want something like Heaped Harvest, or Heaped Harvest specifically maybe, is like with many copies of the like 4 mana forage draw card card, right?
Mhm.
Like in a grindy deck that's just trying to never run out of things to do, maybe like the Harvest could be good, but
Yeah, you don't want to sack it by paying 2 mana. I think you want to say I get 2 lands for 3 mana, and yeah, this is pretty
it's
good.
not that bad if you sack it by paying 2 mana. Like,
Oh no, it will be okay. You can do it at instant speed. You can hold up stuff. It'll be all right. But I imagine unless the set is just super fast, you'll probably be looking to not spend your mana on sacking it. Most like 60-70% of the time would be my guess.
Yeah, you would hope, but you will not always get there.
Yeah.
And that's a nice sort of buyout clause.
Yeah, there's a good point. Yeah, ramping thing's okay in frogs. Yeah, you want to be able to replay your creatures that you bounce your hand. So there can be a use for your mana there. Yeah.
Plus the
And-
uncommon frog like spends mana to blink things.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, if it doesn't die on sight, it'll probably get a lot of value.
All right, shall we move to
Yeah. And then we have lands.
lands?
Yeah. So there's some at rare, varying degrees of fixing capabilities, and then we have Uncharted Haven, which is I generally think of as above average, and Hidden Grotto as average or so. You do get the Scry, which is nice, or Surveil, which is nice. But yeah, so these both have their pluses and minuses. So I think just knowing that these are available and they're at the common slot, I think is useful. And then we have some others you can do some cute stuff with, whether it's Fabled Passage or the Stale Import, that are kind of neat. So yeah, I think there's fixing, but we don't have like the dual lands like we have had in many of the past sets.
so one thing, okay. When I see this like set of fixing available, like my thought for this set is basically, honestly, this thought is now I'm even higher on the banner or on the was it called the banner or the mana rock anthem?
Yeah.
But basically, there is not a lot of fixing in this set, right? There's outside of green, like there's not a lot of colorless fixing. There's only like 2 lands at common, and like Hidden Grotto isn't that good at fixing for your 2-color deck, right? And limited mana bases are bad. Playing a 9/8 mana base is okay, but like it's not ideal. You usually want to have at least 9/9, and it won't always have the option to do that. And like a lot of the options that you don't really want to play Fountain Port Bell if you can help it. So on top of that, there's the uncommon lands that make your mana slightly worse because they're not just tap lands, right? Tap lands wouldn't necessarily make your like colored mana situation worse. It just like makes your deck slightly slower, which is fine if you only have like 2 tap lands or something. But instead, what they do is they make it harder for you to cast your non-creature spells, right? Because they have tap for colorless or tap for colored mana like of 1 color only for creature spells. Okay. So if you're trying to cast like 2 white, right? But like you also are incentivized to have these like white villages. I think they're all called village. It's like something village. If you want to cast 2 white, but you also want to be playing like these nice utility lands, like 2 white on a non-creature spell is going to be kind of rough, and you might end up having like 9 planes plus like a village or something, and then your other colors start suffering, right? So basically what I'm saying is that's reason to prioritize like fixing highly, because like also another thing is like this is not much of a monocolor set because like it's so A plus B, right? Like if you're red white, you probably can't like get away with mostly being white cards because like you'll probably have a bunch of like important red cards that you need for your deck, and then so like you kind of do need to be full on like straight 2-color, in which case like you just like fixing is just pretty key, I think. And I'd be interested to see how good Fountain Port Bell is because it doesn't read particularly appealing. You don't generally want to play a Traveler's Amulet, though notably Bell is better than Amulet mostly. But maybe it's just like a necessary evil in the set.
Yeah, we'll see. I imagine if it does have a place, I don't know. We'll see, because you can see your aggro deck saying, okay, I have 2 Uncharted Havens, and maybe I can fit this in, and it's just a late game. If I run out of gas, I can make some tokens or draw cards or whatever. Or your control deck saying, I'm just gonna, get to turn 8, and I'm gonna be like, okay, now I can refill my hand. And so I don't know. We'll see. I don't think it'll be great, but it does exist. It does make a treasure token, and it can do some other things as well. So we'll see.
All right. Let's move to, once I get to the right screen,
Yeah. So we have
hybrid commons.
We have some hybrid commons, and then we'll look at gold uncommons. And the general thought here is, when you see let's take this first one. Seed Pod Squire. You see it's 3, and then a hybrid Azorius, so white or blue. This is a card that, if it's going to go in any color pair, it's probably going to fit best in the white-blue Azorius color pair. And then you can look at what the card does. You're like, well, it flies and it helps, creatures that are non-flying with its ability. So when we look at the deck shells, you might see that there are decks that have, birds, flyers, and then some non-bird, non-flyers that are looking to get pumped up, or you're going to use on the ground to block or whatever. So all these hybrids are ideally going to fit very well in their color pair. They're 2 color pair. There's 10 of them, so 1 for each pair. The power level, I think, is pretty disparate between them. We'll see some, like the one in the middle, the head of the homestead, that's probably going to be very, very good, and then some other ones that are probably going to be less good. I suppose we'll see. And for the most part, it seems like the double pipped ones, like the third one, head of the homestead, and the 5th one, pawn profit, are going to be a little tougher to fit in decks that are not that particular color pair based on their double pips. So you're probably more likely to get them if you're, white green, or you're, green blue, for example. I think that will probably at least be the case at the beginning. We may find that some cards are so powerful, and you're happy to play, your card, your pawn profit on turn 4 or 5 because it's good enough or whatever, or your head of the homestead in any white deck, regardless of whether you have green or not. But ostensibly, those that have the double pips, it's going to be tougher to put them in decks that are not that particular color pair. So hopefully it's a reward to find your lane. I think we'll see. In terms of how these compare to like the hybrid cards we had before, like the dog walkers and the Grant Witness and stuff like that, I think these will probably be more like rewards for being in your lane than something you take early to try and remain flexible, because of how specific they are and the ability that they're having that fits very well in a color pair and maybe okay in another 1 or 2 color pairs. So time will tell on that, but that's my initial read on the hybrids and how they'll probably play out as more rewards than reasons.
Yeah, in Murders at Carlos Manor, there was a penalty for playing them in the off-color deck, so they had much higher win rates in their color pairs, especially the cheap ones.
Yeah, and it took us a couple weeks to figure that out, I feel like. I mean, I guess we had some initial data, but to really settle on, okay, Dog Walker is probably in everything, Grain of Witness, and the other ones, So, I don't know, we'll see about these.
It depends on how good it is, right? Like, and exactly when you need to flip it, right? So for example, I think like Pawn Profit very clearly like is going to be much worse outside of blue green, but like Head of the Homestead, I think like is just a solid enough card to play in any green or any white deck, right?
Yeah. Which probably means you're not going to see them after pick 4, 5, 6. So you can't really count on getting those at the end of the pack or wheeling them if you're in that color pair. Yeah.
It's also at 5 mana, you should have 2 pips of one of your colors. That's just going to happen frequently
Ideally
enough naturally.
Yeah.
While the double pipped cards on turn 2, that's just not happening ever.
Tougher, yeah. So knowing these exist is helpful, and hopefully they'll turn into more rewards. That you'll get.
I think it's a conscious choice from the design team, because otherwise Pawn Profit would be basically plucked for anyone if it would be hybrid Simic and colorless. It would have been just played everywhere.
Oh yeah.
I mean, okay, they're also like, it's also probably pretty bad for them to print something that costs 1 in a blue and is a 1/1 and draws a card into constructed, would be my guess.
Yeah, that would probably find its way into some decks. Yeah.
Yep.
It just like isn't something blue usually gets. And there was Fibblethip, but that was legendary, so like had some downside,
Yeah,
had some upside too.
4 of them. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the hybrid commons. Also, the gold uncommons. Again, there's 10 of these, one for each color pair. We have just some examples of them on the slide. Again, these feel like they're predominantly rewards for finding your lane. There's, again, disparate power levels. Some of them, like the Wandertail Mentor and the Vinereap Mentor, just seem on rate like fantastic and really help you do what you're trying to do. Some others may be a little less powerful, but knowing that you're probably not going to have decks that are splashing for these the majority of the time is kind of nice. You might be able to actually get these a little later. So I mean, that's my initial read on these as well. It'll probably depend on how strong different color pairs are as to how many of these are picked up in the first like 3 picks versus more like picks 4 to 6, 4 to 7, something like that. But yeah, I think some of them are pretty good to very good in their color pairs.
Yeah, I mean, these are the classic trials and tribulation of signpost uncommons, because that's basically what those are. There will always be weaker ones. There will always be some that are busted early. There's always the expensive, clunky one, and we're going to figure out exactly how that works as the format progresses. I've seen Wandertail Mentor in action. It looks good. It was a 5/5 very quickly.
Yeah. Seems scary when you can ramp to something that will pump it up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like straight into a 4-drop.
Yeah.
And I mean, the 2/2 for a start, it's already pretty good. But okay, let's not go into the individual color. Card
I'm
powers.
sure we will see this in our Gruul deck shells.
Yeah, a lot of the golden commons are very cheap, so like you really do want to have the mana to cast them early.
Yeah, I think that is nice. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you did. I don't know if is it working properly? Is that the next slide? What should?
Yeah,
be? I have some black.
Oh, I hid one slide because we didn't need to talk about forage. We'll just talk about that in the black-green color pair.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I realized that late at night. I was like, why am I making this slide?
So I'm already apologizing for the puns. I was not in charge of this presentation. I'm washing my hands.
Yeah, we had a couple dads who made many of these slides, so you're just gonna have to suffer through it, I think. Yeah. So I guess Springbok, if you want to jump into any of these, if not, I can just kind of tackle this one. You can let me know if you want to tackle any of the next ones.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I think for the most part, these are not going to be surprises when you look at the different color pairs. I mean, many of the white and green cards say rabbit on them as a card type or make the tokens like the hop to it. So going wide and then finding some benefits from going wide, like a Worn Elder to pump your whole team, or a rabbit response to give kind of an inspired charge to your whole team, seem like pretty A+B strategies. But also knowing that there are some ways to get through with trample, like with Overprotect or Galen Moose, gives you a chance to maybe go a little tall as well. And then you have your Tree Guard Duo as another potential way to just pick out a creature, ideally one that has a keyword or two. So I think this will be a pretty straightforward strategy that has some of the stronger commons in it, like Intrepid Rabbit, which is my pick for probably the strongest common in the set. And then Head of the Homestead is probably a top 5 common. So I think their support, knowing that you'll probably have both those picked off by all the other white decks, so you may not be able to have as streamlined of a white-green deck as you'd hope for, because those are such good cards. They'll probably be picked up by any white aggressive deck. But yeah, this seems a very, like, you'll hear for pretty much all these, A+B, make lots of rabbits and then pump them and go wide.
All right, so this is white-blue. So we got a bunch of creatures that with flying that are supposed to help out your random ground creatures. Bunch of other flying creatures, things that get flying. And then also Waterspout Warden's kind of interesting here because it's a creature without flying that has flying when you attack with it, so you can use it to you can pump it with like your Provisioner, your Seedpod Squire, your Plume and Creed Mentor. So it's like kind of an interesting like bridge kind of card for this deck, maybe.
Yeah, I found it quite a revelation when I looked at the slide, and I thought, that's why it is like that. It just basically you can stack the trigger, give it +1, then give it flying, and and you can continue doing your skies deck with a card that no one wants, and have a ground creature that gains flying. That's a very interesting one.
Yeah, it's like kind of a nifty synergy. And then, there's some cheap removal interaction that you can use to help make sure your opponent can't race you very effectively.
Yeah, I think you can add the Sonar Blast or whatever
Yeah,
to that suite, because that's perfect for the flying deck. I just find it weird that most of those synergies are specifically targeted at ground creature, which makes sort of like normally good skies decks are monothematic. You want to have flying creatures, and the rest is not so interesting, because if you start building a board with flying creatures and the non-flying creatures, you're not going to be fast enough in the air, and you're not going to be, big enough on ground. So I found it a bit confusing of a theme, and hopefully it does work, but I'm a bit skeptical.
Yeah, I'm also skeptical at like lack of 2-drops. Really, like I don't know. Are you playing? Maybe you're playing the 2-mana 3/1 that like has Valiant or something to become a 3/3, because all of your birds love to target non-flying creatures.
Yeah, that's what I literally did. I put a bunch of those 3/1s because they attack us 4/4s, and that's fine.
Yeah, I think the 3/1 will want to go in all the white decks will be the thing, which will make it tough. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah, there aren't really like good flyer like two. There aren't really like good 2-mana flyers that common. It's just like the 1/2.
Yeah, I mean, Blue at least has the 2/1 that lets you loot when it enters, which I mean isn't like great for pushing damage, but at least it is something you can do on 2 that helps you find what you're looking for. Because yeah, this could be A+. These are all A+B, but this one could be okay. I don't need this non-flyer. I need a flyer, or I don't need this extra land. I need to find some action or whatever. So we'll see.
Yeah, mostly it's like I have a very strong worry that like I don't know. If you either play a 2-drop and it gets removed, or you just fail to play a 2-drop, then when are you ever casting your Plume Creed Mentor? How are you actually gonna make this work?
There are questions.
We're gonna have to go right.
But the deep questions, we can leave them for the skeletons when we discuss them. I think that here is just more like an overview of what's happening, so we can leave it in here.
So now we have the white-black like Bat's Life Change deck. So got some cheap 2-drops that will increase and decrease your life total. We got the Moonrise Cleric, also increase your life total, and then we have some payoffs for increasing or decreasing your life total. Like Star Charter and Waxwayne Witness and Starseer Mentor all seem like pretty solid. And, it's also just like good interaction spells.
Yeah, Waxwayne Witness is my top of the list of the bad cards I'm going to play way too much.
Yeah. I'm reminded, when did we last have white black where you tried to like gain life? Was it Val? When you're like, okay, I'm trying to gain life. Okay,
Yeah.
well, that was after that, wasn't that 2021?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember the pointed discussion, like the draw 2, lose 2 life. You made a blood with that, which was nice. It was kind of like the draw 3, but like that was actually very good in that deck, and didn't seem like it was very good in other black decks. There may be some way to use some of the card draw that you might not otherwise play in other decks, because you might have a bit of a life buffer here in this deck to get it late and have some utility with it. So there'd be some things where having a life total gives you a chance to turtle or use your life as a resource or things like that.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of spells that you actively like. There is the removal that when you can gift the food or take 2 damage, and in this deck sometimes you just actively want to take 2 damage because you get actually a bonus for losing life.
Yeah,
and there's the same with the card draw spell that pings you for 2. First of all, you have more life, you can cast it, and it gives you this advantage. You can play the attrition game because you're going to draw more cards, and you get those small bonuses for losing life sometimes.
Yeah, I will say I feel like mostly what will trigger your things will be gaining life. Like you should mostly think of this as a like gain life trigger. There's just like a couple exceptions out there, but I also trigger it.
Yeah.
The gold uncommon, the like gold common being like double pipped is also kind of nice for this deck, because it means people are gonna probably try and take it and jam it into like other decks a little less. And
you underestimate the people.
Yeah. Well, hopefully after the first week or two, they won't do it as much. But yeah.
That is true.
But we still may underestimate the people. I don't know.
No, okay. So yeah, we can move to the next one.
All right, Adam, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So this is one of the two very aggro decks in the format, I would imagine. This is about getting creatures on the battlefield and then targeting them with spells or abilities. So we don't have any equipment on here, but there are some equipments or like a class that makes equipment that can be really useful because you can target your creature, get its Valiant trigger for once per turn, and then maybe target another creature. And it is nice because the Valiant triggers are like different types of abilities. So you may have points you're like, okay, I want to pump this creature or tap this other creature. So just having those available, I won't say it's toolboxy because you can't really like tutor up the creature you want to try and get the ability you want, but putting creatures on board and getting benefits when you target them with spells will be useful because you're already probably targeting to try and push damage. Unless you're doing the inspired charge type card. So I think there's potential for this to be like a somewhat scary deck. I do think white aggro, being aggro for all the color pairs, will cannibalize some of the cards you would get in this color pair.
Where did it?
Oh yeah,
where
we
did the
stopped
screen
sharing.
disappear?
There we go. Yeah. So we showed some mice that get buffed and have Valiant triggers. We showed some ways that are good to very good. Like Mabel's Metal is probably going to play very well in this deck, and Might of the Meek will probably play fine to above fine in this deck. And then you have some interaction to try and clear out, creatures that you maybe can't interact favorably with, or stopping your attacks if you're not able to go wide. This deck will probably not go as wide, as effectively as green-white, but hopefully you can have some good Valiant triggers to set up attacks, or you can use combat tricks to take out opponents' creatures.
Yeah, you didn't put the Shuko on the slide.
Yeah. Should have done that. The one that equips for 1 and costs 2 would be a card you'd be more than happy to play. Short bow, thank you. It's an uncommon, and it's probably good that it's uncommon rather than common.
Yeah, it looks pretty strong in this deck because you can trigger multiple Valiant triggers before attacking.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I have bad news about getting that card for this deck because that card looks really strong in general.
Yeah.
It is. It looks like generically good. It's the same thing as the patchwork, whatever banner.
Yep. Yeah. Which is honestly, I mean, it's probably good that you can't guarantee all the cards that you want are going to come in picks, 6 through 11 or whatever. But yeah, that one may be.
I tend to disagree. I prefer to have my good cards pick 6 to 11.
They should have reprinted Tormentor's Helm. That's amazing.
Yeah, there are some things they could have put in here. I imagine they tested some stuff, but yeah. Hopefully this will not be so aggressive that you can't set up good blocks and you can't do some other stuff in the format. So we'll see. There are cheap good tricks, which will probably be annoying. But are there any other first strike tricks? I'm trying to remember. I don't think there are in these colors.
I don't think there's a first strike trick in the set, right?
I don't-
okay. Technically, there's the Trumpet Blast. There's the tuna red Trumpet Blast that has like gift them a something, maybe a food or a card. I forget what. I think it's a food in order to give one thing first strike.
Yeah, so that one exists, and you'll probably play that. I wouldn't imagine it as good as the Inspired Charge, but it does get the targeting, so maybe you would play it in this deck. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's move to the not next one, but the one after the next.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Because we already did the Wabbits.
Yep.
Oh, Threshold.
Yeah. So blue black. I say Threshold because it is on like 7 of the cards. There's not much mill in these colors. There's not much surveil in these colors either. So I think you will turn Threshold on eventually, but I don't think it will be early game mechanic. It'll be more of a mid to late game mechanic. You do have ways to draw a card and have selection. So this will probably end up being more of a controlling color pair, I would imagine, the majority of the times. There are a lot of good instant speed interaction spells in these colors, so being able to hold up 2 or 3 mana, your opponent won't necessarily be able to suss out what that is the first 1 or 2 times you do it, probably, so it does give you some optionality, especially because I think all 4 of those cards on the right are good to very good. And then you just hope we can get on board. Maybe eventually you trigger threshold to get some benefits like the gold uncommon in the middle, or your looter that just becomes an Ophidian to draw cards on the top left. But yeah, I think this will just play like a more or less control deck. Classic Dimir, yes, classic Dimir.
Yeah, I have to say I'm very skeptical of the Dimir. I don't know if my Signpost Uncommon being a turn 9 mana war,
Yep.
that was 3/3 and menace is what swayed me to play the color combination. I think that you're right. I think that threshold is something that might happen just by absolute accident, and I'd rather rely on it playing as a regular control deck than anything else.
Oh, don't worry. I have a Dimir Threshold.
Oh, fantastic!
In the archetype skeleton slide I think is actually pretty good.
I look forward to seeing
Dimir Threshold.
Well, at least we have a volunteer for the Dimir.
There we go.
I don't know, but with Jason, I never know. Is he doing this for Dimir or this for Threshold? Because it can be either or. It might turn out to be Abzan, and then
I was going to say it's going to be Poltari.
By Threshold, it means forage or something.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out in 30 minutes.
Threshold.
My attention is spiking. Let's move on to the more simple color combination.
Okay, so you want to play spells in blue-red, and you have a lot of auditors that have prowess. Then enjoy you playing non-creature spells. So, yeah, I am not thinking this will be good, unfortunately, because a lot of the auditors are underpowered, and there aren't too many like cantripping spells. So I don't know. We'll look at the deck shows and we'll see. But in theory, that's what you're trying to do in blue-red. Is have creatures that like you to play non-creature spells, and then you play those non-creature spells. Yeah.
I think that might be just enough cheap bounce to make it sort of playable.
Maybe. I hesitate to think that's the case, but I don't know. We'll see.
Sort of tempo. You just play the altar, you bounce something, you counter the thing that comes back, you have a free reign to attack. I don't know. I built like super aggro version of it.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing that. I think mine was not aggro enough because I didn't quite see it, so I'll have to see yours. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Alders has merit. I didn't build it though.
Well, they definitely have the cuteness factor.
They do. They're 10 out of 10 on cuteness. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, I was too busy building Storm and Constructed to build my Otter archetypes and skeletons.
Well, all right. All right.
And we're eagerly awaiting for your top 8 list from the next Pro Tour.
There was a good question actually. This probably relates more to Dimir than it does to Izzet, but are 2/5 bodies for 4 better than normal in the set because smaller creatures in general. I mean, I guess in theory, but like you have to figure out what you're going to do with that. If you're actually buying time, like, is that going to work if they're trying to go wide, which many of the white decks want to do? Or is green going to say, okay, well, I've got some fights and bites, and you're not going to, like, your 2/5 that you tapped out for is just going to die, and I'm going to catch you. So I don't know. I'd hesitate to endorse 2/5s for 4 in 2024, even in this set where there are smaller creatures, but we'll see.
Hey,
eternal
that's a
wish going
4/5.
discussion.
Excuse me. That's a 4/5 for 4 you're talking about right there?
Oh, that is tougher to fight. Not tough to bite, I think. But we'll see. We'll see. We have so many puns here. Okay, I'm gonna have to compose myself for this one. So we have cards that like to have an enter effect. Those are on the bottom. They put counters. They draw cards. They loot. And then we have cards that like to bounce those cards back to your hand. That are reasonably on right. 4 4s for 4, 3 3s for 3 with a keyword. So that's all reasonable. If we have some of the ramp or some ways to get our land so that we aren't falling too far behind on board because we can double spell, then that's what the deck will probably try and do is get that value incrementally over time. This will be a fun deck. I think many of these cards are not going to be poached by other decks because they are so synergistic with the other strategies. So I think that is encouraging, where some of the other green cards might get poached by other decks for just raw stats and utility. So yeah, this one looks interesting.
Yeah, I'm. One thing I'm skeptical is this deck looks so mana hungry. I don't know if it can cope with that, but it does have tools. It does have the 2 mana frog that you should be getting, which is really a good rate common. There is the 1/2 that cascades for a land. I wonder if that's constructed playable to look for like an oops no lands, but I somehow gets the Lotus Veil on the board or something. So there are tools for it to get enough resources. Just is it going to be one of those decks that just durdles to gain absolutely no advantage and eventually loses, or is it actually going to be a playable Simic deck? And I think that the 1-drop, the O2 Frog that gains you life, puts a counter.
You'll need that. Yeah.
1 mana 1/3 is already good, and later you can basically start blinking it or bouncing it to your hand and replaying it to gain value out of it. So I'm looking forward to trying it.
I'm hopeful for this one also, because I think it'll just be a lot of fun to play also. Yeah.
Plus, I like the D for Frogs card.
Yeah. Cool. So that's
what do we have next?
Yeah, lizards.
Lizards.
Yeah, so we have our enablers, cards that are going to try and ping your opponent, have your opponent lose life, so that you can have your payoffs, which are cards that come into play with some benefit if you had your opponent lose life that turn. Some of the payoffs look pretty strong, just even if you don't get the trigger, like the one on the right, the Flame Cash Gecko. Some of them, well, you'll probably want the trigger. If you can get your Cindering Cutthroat to be a 4/3 for 3, that will be pretty good, because you can give it menace, and that's just above rate. The cards on the left, I think, are varying degrees of playable for the enablers. So I think that'll kind of be the determinant of, can you get the right enablers and payoffs and draw them in the right order. But this one could be one of the more aggro decks. And you should have reasonable reach for the pings you can do to your opponent that they can't stop. Like, if your Steam Pass Charger dies, like, it's going to deal 1 damage. If it doesn't die and connects, it's going to deal 2 damage. And then you can offspring it. So like, there'll be ways to probably say your opponent's at 5 or 6 life, that they're basically dead from just the reach you can have in this color pair. So I think that will give it some legs.
For me, I think the key synergistic interaction spell is missing from the list. The 3 mana combat trick that gives +2/+0 lifelink and indestructible, which
will probably cost
reduction
1 mana
for lizard. Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think that card is going to push that deck through. I can already announce that probably my first draft in the format, I'm going to try to force lizards, because in the early access, because why wouldn't I?
Yeah. No, I think a lot of us do have early access tomorrow too, so we'll be trying all these things out. Yeah, and yeah, lizards will be one that I'll want to see, because if lizards can be okay, you're dead by turn 6, then that'll be, the fun place that we'll have to kind of be aware of. And there's a lot of good interaction that is relatively cheap.
I don't even care for killing at turn 6. I tend to look at this deck like, by turn 5, I want to have this sort of comfortable inevitability of winning, despite taking 3 more turns to finish the job. That's
what I mean by turn 6 is like, it's, what was the card? You're already dead. Like, you don't realize it, but in 3 turns, the game's over and you can't really do much about it, because I have these pings on board that you can't stop. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so on one hand, lizard stuff does look like it could be strong and aggressive. It's just like, I worry about like just being outstatted by white and green.
Yeah.
There's definitely the problem there, because white and green just look like on. Look, if playing the black-red lizards deck and opponent plays the 2/2 first strike lifelinker and then equips it with a short bow, and you don't win that game.
Yeah. Or they say, I'm going to make 4 food tokens this game, and I'm actually going to use them to gain 12 life, not sack for value, and this deck may not have that much reach. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I think also the 2/1 and the 1/3 don't attack like that well. Past turn 2, so...
You get the one
that's why I think that the +2/+0 indestructible lifelink trick is so important for that.
Yeah, and we could have put the black 1/1 menace that it can pump itself when you're also kind of push through. I think probably that will probably be in the majority of, if not all of our deck shells for this color pair. And it probably won't be great or even good elsewhere. So
Okay, let's move to the forage, or pretend that we have enough food generation and squirrels to actually make it work synergistically, but no, it's just going to be regular Gurkali value.
I've been foraging while we've been doing this.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. So yeah, yes, we're trying to get food and cards in our graveyard. That's on the left. We're getting payoffs for food and cards in our graveyard. That's on the right. I will say that the nice thing is, I think this Bushy Bodyguard, like, will just be like a very good card. I think the Treetop Sentries will probably be a pretty good card. Like, I think some of these cards would be like, okay, I can get these, and even if I only, can proc it, 70% of the time, like, I'll have other 4-drops I can play, so I can play the Sentries when I can proc it, or I'll just pick the Bodyguard up with the green 3-drop that I happen to get, pick 9 or whatever, and I'll play it later with Offspring. And so I think there'll be enough time in this deck because you're generating food, you have good interaction, you have good bodies early that you can kind of figure out how to get your value on turns, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this color pair. And I just think the black interaction is strong in this set, and there's probably enough of it to go around to where you will, have your few pieces to where you can say, okay, I'm going to have answers that are pretty unconditional and early game answers to where I can kind of establish, okay, a board, and I can get to the mid to late game where I can do these value things with my foraging and with my food and all that stuff.
Yeah, I do like the sort of mini combo of Cash Grab and the Curious Forager, where you basically get something in your graveyard, you get the food, you can play the Forager, you get the stuff that you put in your graveyard back from your graveyard, and that brings me this comfortable feeling in my stomach of playing Old Rutstein, and just the kind of Magic I like to play. And I think Cash Grab will go late because no one is interested in that card that much unless you're playing squirrels. And so if you're you don't have to go for squirrels, you just will have more squirrels when you play black and green because that's where squirrels are. So that card might be actually neat.
So, do you know how many of my green shells have had Cash Grab in them?
Yeah, but Jason,
well, it's probably because
you are special. You need the kind of a card, and then you will play it and construct it, and it will still be good. By the way, I need a 4th one for my Amulet deck, damn it. I'm talking about Malevolent Rumble, not about the Cash Grab.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing for this deck is I think the Banker's Bane duo is just going to be very good, and they get taken for any green deck. And like same Bushy Bodyguard, and so your 2-drops that you're looking to get, you're probably not going to see them pick 6 to 10, which could be challenging. Yeah,
there's kind of a lack of like repeatable, but there's not a ton of repeatable. Are there any repeatable ways to make food? Actually, I don't think there's like
define repeatable.
Like something that's like tap make a food or something.
Well,
like that.
Okay, there's I don't think we've ever gotten tap make a food really, but
I mean,
there's like for example, there's the 4-mana blue the frog, the uncommon frog that like blinks things over and over. You can blink a Baker's Bane duo over and over, right? Or like there's a black one. The rare black talent says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, make a food.
Yep. But you don't have sacrifice outlets because Offspring are cute.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You'll make a lot of food with that.
Yeah. You just attack them, and they either get damage in or they die, and then you get food. So it will find a way. But yeah, I agree. You do have to try and engineer those situations in the draft. You're like, okay, I need to be looking for these particular cards. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Cool.
And we have the last one, as always. Gruul Smash. Is it Gruul Smash?
I think
this time it's more like Gruul Trash.
Yeah. So
finally, a good pun. We waited for an hour.
Yeah, it took us a bit. Yeah. So this rewards you for doing things you want to do. Spend mana to cast spells, which seems pretty on brand for Magic. So you have some of your enablers. You could say that this Wandertail Mentor is both an enabler and a payoff, but the fact that you can play 4 drops on turn 3 because it's a mana dork, and it fixes for both colors is really nice. But also it'll get bigger, so it can actually maybe attack when you're not trying to ramp stuff out. There's synergistic removal. I think Take Out the Trash will be a good to great red common in all the color pairs, but will probably be exceptional in this color pair. One for just clearing out blockers, or you have something bigger and you can take out like a double block, but also getting the rummage will be good. And then there are payoffs, and by payoffs I really mean stuff that costs 4 mana or has a trigger whenever you expend. So yeah, I think that this will probably be another A plus B, but I think it'll probably fit together fairly well because the green cards look like they're reasonably statted, and there's pretty good interaction in green and red. That's not terribly expensive, and you're not trying to do threshold or do flying with non-flying. You're saying I'm just going to spend mana to play spells.
Yeah, no, your A plus B is a good creature into a good creature, which is a good kind of A plus B synergy.
Yeah.
I've never spent mana to cast spells in my life. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, this will be a first then. Yeah.
If Take Out the Trash ramages 60% of the time, and in other decks 30% of the time, it makes that into a really good card all of a sudden.
Yep.
And you would just, again, without trying for raccoons, you're going to get the raccoons because you're in the color where most of the creatures are raccoons. So there you go. All right.
Yeah, and I think you're also just happier to play a lot of these creatures than the others.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that we are done with the color pair combinations, and
am I going to tag out Circo and get Trustio in?
Yeah, and I think that maybe I can go back to presenting mode, I guess. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully it will work. Now at least we know the problem is in my computer.
Small break.
Yeah,
we can take a small break. Just let's. I love that art, by the way. We can take a slideshow. We can say bye to Adam because Adam will be replaced by Trezio.
Yeah.
So Adam, thank you very much for your valuable contribution and puns.
Yeah, it's a pleasure as always. I'll be doing early access tomorrow. I'll probably stream some.
Where can we find you?
Oh yeah, I guess I'm on Twitch and Twitter at Adam_DDAVP, or the reverse for. I don't know. If you type DDAVP, I will probably be the only thing that comes up that is Magic related. So, yeah. So you can go for that, and then I look forward to seeing this. I think it will be pretty linear, but I don't know. I think it'll still be fun for at least a few weeks, and then we'll see crazy stuff that Jason builds today that we'll see in 3 or 4 weeks when it's.
No, I don't have anything super crazy.
No,
it's kind of, I don't know. It feels bad to be kind of poo-pooing the set, but it doesn't look that interesting to me. I'm just spoiled by Modern Horizons,
Yeah, that was not A plus B. That was pretty wild. Anyway, appreciate it again, everyone. Hope you all have a good last deck shell part of the stream.
Okay, and this concludes the part about the color pairs and the format ideas we have, and we can move on to our archetype skeletons. But we had a change in the composition of the stream. We lost Adam and his puns, and we gained Trezio. So welcome, Trezio. You are one of my patrons. It's been a bit of a stab in the dark to put you on the stream, but I'm sure it's going to all turn up perfectly fine. So welcome to you. Can you maybe tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. I started playing Magic when Magic started being a thing. And then somewhere around Fallen Empires, Ice Age, Homelands, then life overtook me. And then I did not play Magic for 25 years until New Capenna. And then when I came back, I found out, there's this magical thing called Limited, and there's a thing called drafting, and this seems like a really fun thing to do. And so I've played a lot of Limited since then. And basically, it is the Magic I play, and I really enjoy it.
Hopefully for you, you'll manage to keep some of the binders from your first stint at Magic. Okay, let's move to the And I'm going to put you on the spot straight up. Let's move to the archetype skeletons. There's going to be a bit of clicking so I can switch between the windows, but I'm going to show your approach towards the skies deck, because it seems you have a slightly different concept than we discussed before. Yeah, there we are. So walk us through that.
Yeah, so basically, I found myself very quickly not caring about flyers buffing ground creatures, with the exception of the Waterspout Warden that was mentioned earlier. That's probably the number one creature that I want to be buffing with the helpful flyers every turn, because then it turns them into flyers anyway. So it's really a, at its core, a pretty typical like blue-white flyers deck. But it tries to most everything is flying, and anything that's not flying, it tries to cast into the air as quickly as possible. So the things that I want to be getting buffed by the flyers are things with keywords. So the Warden is going to become flying as a result of that. And then you have things like the Brightblade Stoat. The Warren Elder is there because that's a card almost no matter the archetype, I found myself putting one copy of at least into decks to be able to make the archetypes that were filled with more of the smaller size creatures. I mean, thinking back to what Jason was saying earlier about green, and green's creature sizing is going to be a problem for other decks in this format, I think. And so what does white blue try to do? Fine, stop me on the ground. I'm gonna try to go over the top, and I think this is going to be pretty aggressive. And yeah, the rares that I picked were the Windcrested and the Swan. The Swan, I think, is pretty key to this kind of a build.
That's the rare 4 mana 3/3 flyer, and it gets some bird recursion, I think. No. Oh, the blinks a bird. Yeah. No, you blink a creature without flying. That's what it does. Okay. Yeah, that I see that you definitely went all in for the bird synergies, because that's the thing, that it has the synergy of flyers and non-flyers, but on the other hand, you have the Kingfisher, which strictly synergizes with other birds, which most of the time are flying creatures. I have one extra creature for you to consider that is not flying that you might want to put in your deck, and that's the unblockable thing that loots whenever it connects, because you don't care that it doesn't fly, because it's still unblockable as it is, and you can grow it by those bird synergies. So that's maybe another 2-drop that you can add into this deck that allows you for some kind of card selection and synergies with the non-flyers, so you can pump it with the Plume Creed Mentor or something.
Also, the 3/1 that gets +0/+2 when you target it might be good here, because you're probably going to get a lot of triggers off of it, like repeatedly.
Yeah.
It's a nice way to get some early damage going.
Oh yeah, we lost Jason. Okay, there we go. There's Jason.
Yeah,
Jason.
I switched to a different computer because I was having internet issues on the computer I was using. So hopefully this is better.
Okay. Anything to add on the blue-white skies?
I still am skeptical. I very much agree that the blue unblockable creature is very interesting to me, because you want something that can do the evasion thing while also not having flying, which is kind of rough, and also you want 2-drops to curve into your 3-drop birds. But yeah, I'm mostly kind of skeptical.
When do you think we play Plume Creed Escort? Do you play it on turn 2, or do you keep it in your hand for later to 2-for-1?
I mean, it depends on your hand, do you have a curve lined up? Maybe it doesn't matter whether you play it on turn 2, because playing it on turn 2 doesn't let you play your gold card on turn 3, because you can't put a counter on your Escort. It's terrible.
And again, I think that this is something I didn't take into account when I was building my version, but it's true that the there is plenty of this solid kind of tempo plays like Into the Floodmaw that will play very well with those flyers. And I think that this package could be also interesting potentially if you're going all in for flyers. You might just as well keep a couple of bounce spells here and there to make sure that you're winning the race.
Lumencreed Escort and the Dazzling Denial also play pretty well together.
How does this deck win against the short bow?
Well, you see, you're not a flyers deck. Half of your deck is not flyers, so like, does it actually matter?
You got to cast Banishing Light on the short bow, I guess.
I guess that's the way to do it. And the fact that the Banishing Light is at common is something reassuring.
Well, and also that's another argument for the 3/1 because the 3/1 is the one that has the disenchant effect, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah. What do we have next? Oh,
Yep.
The next deck is Dimir Threshold from Jason. Let's see that one. I didn't actually see it. So for
Okay,
me,
before you click on it, want to guess how many blue and how many cards are blue and or black in this deck?
like half,
And how many of them say threshold? Do you think?
2.
0.
My guess is 2. Yeah, that makes sense.
We're gonna see it in a second. Okay. I open it. Now I have to again switch the window. Right. Tell us, please.
Well, you know
It's
what card-
green. Yeah, it is green.
Yeah.
For those
You
that are not watching it but listening to is in the podcast version, I see a sea of green creatures and green spells. And
Well, okay, so you see, a really good card for enabling Threshold is a card that puts four full cards into your graveyard for 2 mana. Cash grab. It's so obvious. Like, if you really want to be a Threshold deck, you gotta play green for cash grab. Like, how else are you getting your graveyard? How else are you getting a Threshold on like turn 4, right? So I am a huge believer in the card cash grab here. I think it's the best way to enable Threshold. And like maybe that means you're not playing exactly blue black, but that's fine. Green cards are better anyway. So why don't you just play more of them?
Okay, can you walk me through what constitutes it as a Threshold deck?
Well, okay, like it could have more Threshold cards, right? Like, hey, I have 3 cards. I have 5 cards that say Threshold on them. I have Shoreline Looter. I have Thought Shucker. I have 2 whatever it's called, the gold uncommon. I have so many Threshold cards.
Yeah, it's 5. Yeah.
And then once I'm. So the great thing is, once I'm done with my Threshold, right? Okay, like for example, like the gold cards and the Thought Checker, I can just play it, have Threshold in that moment, and then okay, I'm done with Threshold. Then I can start foraging away my Threshold, right? Like that would be such a waste if those 7 cards in my graveyard just like didn't do anything, right? Like there's not that many Threshold cards. So what if I just got to Threshold, used it, and then backed off a bit? Like I don't need to always be at 7 cards in graveyard. Why would I need that?
So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Five forage things.
Forage cards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because
it's
I want to make food. I
so-
want to make food with my cash grab, so I need squirrels.
I jokingly described Sultai as a Threshold forage deck before, and I see that you literally went for that.
Yeah, it's not a joke.
The most non-bow version of the deck, but I can see that. I can see that working. I can see that once you establish Threshold, actually blinking the Tide Color Mentor with the Lily Splash Mentor, the Simic one, is a nice lock that you can build.
Yeah. Also, you can play a bunch of Baker's Bane duos to enable your foraging. You don't need to exile cards for your graveyard to forage.
Yeah. No, you have. Hopefully, you will get a cash grab food token as well. So
Yeah. I just think, this
And
is the
assume-
best way to play Threshold. Well,
And I
why would
assume that you want to
blue
probably
black
load
cards?
up on the mind spirals as much as you physically can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a draw 3. I'm gonna play my draw 3. Draw 3s are nice.
No, those decks usually want so many of them. It's a shame that there is no like modal spell where you can sometimes draw 2 for cheap and sometimes draw 3 for a bit more, because that would be great for this deck, it seems to me. But yeah, you definitely want to ramp. You definitely want to fix your mana. So you have the Heaped Harvest. You have the 3/3 Root Weavers, the 1/3 mana dorks.
If only they tapped
there's-
for 3/3 mana.
There you go. Patchwork Banners are in there, and you win by whatever.
Yeah, notably, this deck should probably have some removal in it. I just threw random cards in, but like, the main point is the best way to enable Threshold is to be green.
Okay, you learned it here first. Threshold green mechanic. Werebears are unfortunately not available.
Oh, imagine if they reprinted Werebear. That would be so sick.
We would learn that it's unplayable, and that would be a sad moment.
That would be sad.
Okay. Anyone else has some comments on the Dimir Threshold deck? If not, then we can move to the next one.
Looks awesome. I want to try this out now.
I think every blue-black deck should look like this, Every single blue-black deck.
I think I agree. In this format, in my blue-black deck, I would prefer to have more than 50% of green cards.
I think in most decks in the format, I would like to have more than 50% green cards. To be honest.
I'm fine having 60% white, 40% green.
That's true.
Okay. Next archetype we're going to do is Springbox Rakdos Lizard damage. Okay, mana values, creatures. There we go.
Well, I mean, this is just kind of a straightforward deck. It's got some early creatures to push damage, some payoffs, some removal spells, and then some ways to have repeatable damage, and a nifty way to finish the game off if it takes that long with the Reptilian Recruiter and stuff.
Yeah, the Reptilian Recruiter seems like a good top end. It's a shame that there are no sacrifice outlets for it.
Yeah, it's fun because it can give itself haste too. If you
that is correct. The mode of giving haste is sometimes quite relevant.
I mean, this deck is kind of interesting because stuff like Sinister Monolith, I'm not entirely sure on, but it's a nice way to get some damage in while also having some cards. This might be a little bit too split of a build. Maybe I should have gone in a little more all in, but I think it might be.
Early winter, you are keen on having a 5 mana removal?
Not really, but I kind of wanted an extra removal spell, and I felt like the uncommon creatures were more important than
just put a second hunger. You
yeah,
can.
let's do one of each.
And Scales of the Shale, you have that combat trick. That's the one we were talking before. 3 mana, but costs 1 less for each lizard you control. +2/+0, lifelink indestructible. That's a very good way of swinging races and making sure that you're not losing a particular game. On the other hand, you don't want to see it against
your
you.
opponent has to respect a lot of when you're attacking with your lizards.
I think this is also a decent card in this kind of build. The Sazakap's Brew, that's the Tormenting Voice at instant. And you can gift a fish to give a creature +2/+0 until end of turn. And that, sometimes will be actively what ends the game, and sometimes you can just make sure that you don't flood, and this is your mana sink basically, when you can discard a land and hopefully dig for some more action in your deck.
Yeah, I mean, this deck has some menace creatures, so +2/+0 plays a bit better with your menace creatures.
Any other thoughts from anyone else on the Lizards deck?
I found
Jason
that
is
I really wanted the red uncommon land in this deck. It seems like a deck that wants to be providing haste on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah.
I can see that happen. I actually didn't put any of those villages in any of my decks, but if I would be putting one, I'd do probably this particular deck, or
There's
maybe
also like slight combo of the Raccoon Rallier plus the Whisker Squill Scribe of you get to like loot every turn. Like some way to run out of cards.
yeah.
You have to do
Value is the haste thing.
Yeah, it's like below the Flame Cash Gecko.
Yeah.
It is unfortunate that sorcery speed, but you still get to loot.
Yeah, and I think that again, I don't predict this to be a tier 1 deck in the format. I would be actually quite surprised, and I don't think that it can support more than one drafter on the pod. But I think that this will sort of bring back the feeling of red black from Ikoria, where it was sort of pinging your opponent to death, and despite not having any large creatures and playing 1-mana 1/2s all the time, you somehow always find a way to win the game. And it lacks certain elements that deck had in Ikoria, but I think it has a better suite of those pinging effects that slowly outgrind the opponent. And it will feel very sad when you see a life-linking creature. So make sure that you have removal to back up your pinging, because otherwise that might end up in a disaster.
Notably, Agate Assault does kill the short bow, so there's that.
There you go. Agate Assault kills the short bow. Agate Assault is actually looking really good because it kills 96% of common creatures. That's the 3-mana sorcery that deals 4 damage to target creature and exiles it. And as a second option, you can exile target artifact. So kills the One Ring, basically.
Yeah. Well, speaking of like removal, I think I would like. I don't know how interested I am in the 5-mana black removal spell, but I might actually like legitimately be interested in the 5-mana red removal spell for this deck, because like I feel like one of the deck's weaknesses is go wide. Like if your opponent's going wide, your menace creatures have a bit of a tough time getting through.
You're talking about conduct electricity. They deal 6 and deal 2 to a token.
Yes. Trick shot, except it can kill an 8/8 token. So like, right. I don't know. I could see that being worth it.
I think that they're sort of. I know it's a weird comparison, but the conduct and electricity feels to me a bit like what was the 6/2 in OTJ? The one that gave -2/-2. That sort of feels like that.
Oh, the Gigapede?
The
Ambush Gigapede?
Yeah, Ambush Gigapede. That's the one. Yeah, exactly. It weirdly feels like it might be fulfilling similar role in the way that you kill something big, you kill something small, and you manage to attrition opponent out of the game through 2-for-1ing them with a mediocre spell that you will get very late in every draft. I'm going to skip to my Otter aggro because I'm just interested in this and Absent builder talent, and we rather not keep one person talking about the decks. Okay, so I thought I would like to build a more aggressive version of the Otter's deck, and there are a couple of things that I wanted to put. First of all, I think Might of the Meek is a neat thing to put in those kind of decks because it allows you, it's a 1-mana cantrip, a target creature gains trample until end of turn. It also gains +1/+0 until end of turn if you control a mouse. And draw a card. So it allows you to cast multiple spells. It allows you to limit the number of lands you're playing in your deck so you have a higher spell density. And it allows you to double spell quite efficiently. So I wanted to put that in my deck. Because I put this one, I also wanted to put the Heartfire Hero. That's a 1-mana mouse soldier. And whenever it becomes the target of a spell or an ability I control for the first time, each turn you put a +1/+1 counter on it, which means that it can grow as well as the prowess creature, sort of. And when it dies, it will, if it's not exiled, it will potentially deal enough damage to finish the game. So that's your sort of like a reach creature. I think it's a pretty good creature in general, but I think it will work in this deck. Apart from that, I have 11 creatures only, at the name at least. Bunch of them are otters. There is also the Plume Escort that we learned about during the Flyers deck already. The 2/1 bird with flash flying and gives hexproof as it enters. I have 2 Spergolger Weirds 2.0, which are the Tempest Angler. The one is the hybrid Otter Wizard. Whenever I cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it. It's a 2/2. So basically a Spergolger Weird, but a hybrid, is it? And a couple of other otters. I put the Valley Flood color as my rare. That's the 3-mana 2/2 Otter Wizard with flash, and I may cast now all my non-creature spells as they had flash, so I can cast sorcery speed things as instants. And whenever I cast a non-creature spell, birds, frog, otters, and rats. And in this deck, it's mainly otters. Untap and get +1/+1 until end of turn. So it's another way of doubling your prowess sort of counters. And at the top end of the deck, I have the Alania's Pathmaker, the 4-mana 4/2 otter accidentally also that exiles a card from the top of the library, and you can cast it until the end of your next turn. And this sort of like concludes the creature base. Apart from that, I have Otterable Antics, which is a non-creature spell, but it makes prowess otters, so that's sort of a creature through that. A bunch of 1-mana interaction. I have the Into the Flood mode, the bounce spell for 1 blue, Shore Up to protect my creatures if I need so, and then a combination of removal and card draw. Namely, I have 2 Pearls of Wisdom. I think that it's very important for those decks to be able to draw a lot of spells. Pearls of Wisdom cost 3 mana, but when I have an Otter, which I almost always will have in this deck, it costs only 2 mana. And then if I have a thing like Stormcatch Mentor that reduces the cost, it will cost 1 mana, which is what I'm aiming for, being able to cast that spell for 1 mana, draw 2 cards. Again, going back to Ikoria, and I think the last time that the aggressive kind of spells archetype was valid, of One Mind was playing that kind of role, and it was very important for those decks. And apart from that, bunch of removal spells that are cheap. Take out the trash. Importantly, I put in. Did I put it, or I didn't put it in the end? I thought I put it. You should have a raccoon in your deck somewhere if you're playing the take out the trash to maximize the capability of looting. Saskap's Brew, that another card that allows you to draw more cards for relatively cheap. Playful Shaft draws a card and maybe kills something small. And a Blooming Blast instead of the second, take out the trash, because sometimes I want to have the ability of my removal spell of going also face. This one deals 2 damage, but I can grant my opponent a treasure or gift a treasure, and then it deals 3 damage to the controller of the creature I'm trying to kill. So, and 1 Dire Drowned Draft as a sort of catch-all removal spell that is also a non-creature spell, which adds to my synergies. And this is sort of how I envision the sort of faster version of that deck. I can also imagine that there is a grindier one that relies more on those 6-7 mana creatures. Like there is a 6 mana 4/4 Otter that allows you to cast a spell from your graveyard for free. There is the 7 mana Crab that costs 1 less for each non-creature spell in your graveyard and taps 2 creatures. This could have potentially been a top end in this particular deck. I just didn't put it. But I envisioned that there might be 2 versions of this deck, and I went for the one that I think is a bit more aggressive and more all-in on the draw cards, cast your spell kind of synergies. And I don't know if it can get a sufficient density of spells to not flood in the end. And that's, I think, the biggest problem I see for that deck. I just wanted to build it in this kind of version.
I think the 1 in a red 2/2 that loots when you target it might be like a good way to also not flood in this deck, because you have a lot of your Might of the Meeks can target it at least.
Yep.
You have other ways to do so as well.
That is correct. For the reference, you don't even have to target it with Might of the Meek. You can target it because you want to ramage, but the bonus is reliant not on targeting a mouse, but if you control a mouse, which is important because you can use it on other creatures, give them trample. Only requirement that you have is having a mouse on board. Yeah, but that's a good shout. The 2/2 mouse that allows you to ramage Also, the 2-mana 1/1 that is unblockable, that loots might be decent in this deck. I think that card generally looks like one of the stronger things that blue has to offer, especially on the cheap.
Yeah, and maybe like the 2/2 raccoon that gives haste as well. That at least is for like take out the trash or for like your.
Yeah, I think that with more copies of Take Up the Trash, the more copies I have, the more I want to have some raccoons to help. And yeah, maybe the Heister is okay.
One card I do really want in this kind of shell is the draw 3. Specifically, like if you're prowessy, right? Like the tap and stun mode where you're gifting a fish can actually be pretty backbreaking. Like if you're actually attacking, right? And you might have like it cost only 4 with your like gold card or something.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'm always up for a draw 3 card, so you don't have to convince me extra hard for that. Trezio, do you have any thoughts on the Izzet decks in this format?
Yeah, I mean, just comments on your shell that you've built here. I would really want to include the crab here because you're doing so many early things and you're using so many small cantrips. I mean, that crab is not going to be a 7-mana spell in this shell. It's going to be a 2 or 3 mana spell a large portion of the time. And the other card that I thought would fit here really nicely is Splash Portal, the 1-mana uncommon blue card that
Blinks.
it blinks one of your things, but then you also draw a card if you control an otter. So, think about especially if you're blinking one of your cards that already is giving you card selection or additional card draw, and then you're also drawing a card, and it's 1 mana and a non-creature. I mean, I think it fits here really well.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine blinking the Alania's Pathmaker or something like that. By the way, what do you think about this card? Because, it's basically 4 mana draw a card 4/2.
I mean, I think it's going to be
like
pretty
it.
good.
Yeah, that looks to me like a pretty good card on raid, but it didn't get like. At least I didn't see any hype of that card. It just like looks sort of meh. Did we?
I think it might be because people are remembering like Wolverine, and like Wolverine wasn't that good. But like I think this card's gonna be better than.
There's a big difference between this and Wolverine. Like Wolverine, you couldn't just cast it on curve, right? Because like you needed to plot it first. Whereas this, like you can just cast it turn 4 and like turn 5, almost certainly you can use the card some way, right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Now I'm thinking about the crab, and the crab reminds me of the Hearth Elemental from Wilds of Eldraine. That card was always costing 1/2 mana, and I think that in this deck it might be the same situation. So I think I'll take that comment on board, and next version, if I build the next skeleton, I would definitely include it in there, because the fact that it taps 2 things on ETB, that's pretty good. Being a 5/5, that's pretty good. And you can build up to those turns when you cast the crab. It has flash. Cast the crab at the end of opponent's turn. Tap 2 blockers. Untap. Do some shenanigans. Cast several spells because you have mana to do so, and finish the game.
Yeah, the crab is just like a really big tempo swing, especially for a deck that wants to be attacking. Like, can do a lot.
Well, if you do end up playing Splash Portal, it's another excellent bounce target, right? Just bounce it and tap 2 more things and enjoy.
Yep. Okay. We have a Gruul now, and who wants to give their Gruul thoughts? There we go. So.
Yeah, basically this is just like play like good creatures, and use your above rate creatures to beat your opponent's face in with removal. Like
that sounds like a solid strategy, and I think it's going to pay. It looks pretty powerful if your green is open.
Yeah, and I mean like there's a lot of good uncommons and stuff that you can play pretty easily in this deck that are very aggressively statted. That'll be pretty likely to attack well. And it'll really help you like get mana up to like 3 and 4 mana. Like I could have put in more 4 mana spells, but I decided to try to be a little bit more like lean. I think you got the pig, and the pig and the moose are gonna win you some games probably.
Yeah, they look like really solid top ends for those kind of mid-range decks. But I also like the Junkblade Bruiser, the hybrid common in red-green. I mean, it's a 4/5, which is a good body on the defensive. And on your turn, it will be probably quite frequently a 6/6. So You got to discount Dreadmaw.
6/6 trample.
And 6/6 in this format is the pinnacle of what a creature can achieve. It's and its activated version, it's the biggest common creature in the whole set. So, that's
And all
what's
of your
really
big stuff has trample, so like it's pretty hard to.
or evasion, like the Rust Shield Rampager.
Sticky Stone Sentinel is like kind of interesting because you can use it to like pick something up and replay it to get like expend triggers. It's also
That's the 3-mana Reach Frog. That when it ETBs, you can bounce something to your hand. I'm looking at the... Okay, there is the raccoon that gives haste. There is the mouse that you like. Yeah, Brazen Collector. That's another card that I put also in my thing. That's the 2-mana, 2/1 first striker, Raccoon Rogue. And whenever it attacks, you add red mana, and you don't lose that mana as the phases turn on this particular turn. So that's another way of like proactively and aggressively ramping to 4 on turn 3. Because most of the time, I think a 2/1 first striker will have attacks on turn 2. I mean, when you're on the play, arguably... No, there's some 1/3s, but a lot
there's
of
like
them.
the two. I mean, there's also that 2/3 for 2. But it's
Yeah.
pretty easy to have an attack.
But if you bravely attack into a 1/3, who is going to block? I mean, if you would attack with the non-first striker, maybe. But if you're attacking with the first striker, no one is blocking you when you do it confidently enough, and you just get in.
Yeah. Like the Brazen Collector, like especially with the prevalence of 3/2s, like that's probably just going to be like a pretty like solid card in the early stages of the game.
Yep. And then there's a collection of bite and fight spells. There's the Polywallop, the Frog fight spell. There is the Hunter's Talent, Longstalk, Brawl.
So I put like a bunch of the 1-mana things in just because like with 3 drops, you kind of want 1-mana spells that you can expend for. And like I think the providing trample is like pretty useful when I have like a bunch of like big stuff.
Yep. Yeah, you sort of have this sort of U-shaped mana curve where you have a bunch of 2s, not much in the middle, and then big 5-6 mana things.
Yeah,
I think that it could even have more of those to sort of accentuate the plan of playing this kind of U-shaped deck.
Yeah, I could have put more 4 drops in probably, but like Roughshod Duo and Brambleguard Veteran I think are just like pretty solid.
Brambleguard Veteran is the 3-mana 3/4, and when you expand all the raccoons you control get +1/+1 and Vigilance until end of turn. So yeah, if you carve that one into a 4-drop, you probably have quite a big attack.
Swing for 4, like swing as a 4/5 vigilance every turn is.
And by that time, your Wondertail Mentor, which is also a raccoon, might be big enough to actually benefit from that vigilance attack and still be available for, I don't know, 1-mana combat trick exactly. Which
Like this is a pretty strong deck at uncommon, but like at common, I think is like a little bit more speculative. Like a lot of these good plays are uncommons.
Any other thoughts on the Gruul decks, Jason?
I mean, I don't know. It's just Gruul.
I know that your version of a Gruul deck is black removal with blue interaction.
No. I respect Gruul. Gruul is just good Gruul stuff. Like I don't know. I just don't have what to say because like no, it's just good stuff. I don't know. Like the cards are good. Just play them.
Yeah, it's nice because all the creatures are like above rate. Like I'm not too unhappy to just like put them in, and then like they will usually add up to a little bit more than just like already being like a pretty good rate creature.
Yeah.
Trezio?
Couple of things stood out to me when I was building red green. One was I became very interested in the 2-mana creatures that had offspring 2. Even if they were not raccoons, because it was a really easy way to, and none of them are useless. I mean, they don't play against what this, the Gruul deck is trying to do. But the fact that you can have 2 drops that can become expend 4 triggers whenever you want is really nice. And the other thing I was noting is, if you think about how heavily in demand in MH3 the green fight spells were, I think they're going to be much less heavily in demand here because the creature sizing being smaller, this is one of the only decks, and probably the primary deck, that's going to want to make the best use of them. So it's not like other decks won't take them sometimes, but I think you're going to have to fight for the fight spells a lot less in this format than you do normally.
Yeah, they're not as effective when you have 5/1/1 rabbits.
Long Tusk Brawl in particular is a card that I think you're mostly going to play in like some teamer deck, because like that one very much demands that your creatures are just bigger. Like I don't really want to like give them a fish necessarily to get a counter.
And also like Hunter's Talent is going to be so much better in this deck because it triggers for the creatures with power 4 or greater. This is the deck that has a higher density of those. Yeah. So
plus giving trample to your stuff is like pretty.
Yeah, trample is good. One trick I don't see here is the +3/+3 hexproof indestructible.
Yeah, I mean I ran out of uncommons.
Yeah. We are very flexible with the rules, so if you run out of the uncommons, just add one more. That's fine. Okay. Let's look at Trezio's bunnies. Oh, that's already neatly arranged. There you go.
Bunnies. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I started by just how many rabbits can I possibly make, right? Like, where are all the cards that are going to make me multiple rabbits? And Jason already talked about Head of the Homestead earlier. I'm doubling up on Warren Elder, a card that I think is going to have a lot of play in this format, because here it's obviously kind of a key card to be able to go wide and have everything being 2 or 3 power instead of 1 or 2 power.
When you pump 4 mana into it, you probably want to get +4/+4/+5/+5 out of it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that it's repeatable here and it hasn't been in some recent formats is really important. And 4 mana versus 5 is also really, really important. I think Druid of the Spade at 3, being able to become a 4/3 trample basically all of the time is critical. The things that I'm worried about, there are lots of different cards that can make a bajillion rabbits, okay? But the things that I'm worried about in white-green are that overprotect, the card that you called out, Sirkovitz. Like, every green deck, I think, is going to want this card. And I think it's pretty important when you have a lot of little tokens to occasionally be able to make them big. But the other card...
You also have the trigger duo to do exactly that, make them bigger and potentially give them trample at some stage.
Yeah, I mean, the Tree Guard duo on 4 with Druid of the Spade on 3 is I think, a pretty important, combo that's not requiring rares, right? I mean, you're getting a 4/3 trample and then immediately making it quite a bit bigger. But the other card that I think, says rabbit in the title, but I think non-rabbit decks are going to want it, is Rabbit Response. That's if you're in white-red, you have access to a couple of different anthems, but I still think that some white-red decks are going to choose that as an anthem, and even some of the black-white bats decks are going to choose it, because the rabbit payoff there is a lot more minor than, or at least will be perceived as more minor. I'm going to love Scry 2, but it's not perceived as much of a payoff as the raccoon payoff card or the otter payoff card or things like that. So I think it's kind of a key to this deck to be able to get some of those key tricks and anthems.
Because I can see that being used also with the flyers or with mice sometimes. But I think that this one is the best shell in truly going wide. So you might end up with those 7 creature boards where you just cast it and win the game. And
that rare Infinius of being able to draw a card when you have creatures of power 10 or greater is pretty essential to maintaining gas too, I think.
Well, yeah, you would hope that you get it. I think that more often than not, Burrowguard Mentor is going to be as much as you can get for that kind of super wide effect, which also is great. Potentially carve out of 2 mana 1/1 into 3 bunnies and swinging for 4 with trample. So that's I do like this Harvest Right Host, the 3 mana 3/3. Where it or any other rabbit enters target creature you control gains +1/+0. and then if that triggers for the second time in a turn, you draw a card. That's like the unicorn from
It's kind of like
Murders at Cardiff Manor.
from SNC.
Is what?
Rumor Gatherer from SNC.
Yeah, but that one was bad because it was like a 3-mana 2/1 or something, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
also double white in like a 3-color set.
And this
This
one is
one-
a 3-mana 3/3, which is neat.
It also immediately gives +1/+0, which I think is
Yeah.
generally better than the Scry one.
Yep.
Also, like Rumor Gatherer didn't do anything immediately, right? It was when something else entered.
No, yeah, it was only one other thing. Yeah.
Also, in a deck where you're going wide, note the inclusion of the green land.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it will be. I mean, yes, it means that if you draw your things later in the game, they become relevant, and that's basically what you want in this deck, because you might run into a problem that you didn't win early, and then in the late game you're sort of like, okay, I'm not playing my 2/2. Well, at least now the 2/2 is a 3/3, so you get some kind of a bonus in that late game.
Well, like just imagine what Head of the Homestead is looking like when it's a 4/3 and 2 2/2s, as opposed to.
But that's 7 mana. That's if you get to 7 mana, you're probably in trouble anyway, because that game was way overblown, unless you're playing some kind of a mirror. But yeah, I mean, I do agree that the Oak Hollow Village can be something that this deck wants, because hopefully you are not super heavy on the green mana, so you can sacrifice one of those green pips, because most of your green things are creatures. You can't cast your Galewind Moose. That's gonna come. That's gonna come important at some stage. Okay.
I guess like
Shit.
also this deck is worse at using the green removal than like most of the other green decks. So I would prefer your removal comes from white.
It misses the Thraben charm. That's what this deck is definitely missing. Right, let's talk about Jerobills potentially. Jason, are you keen to talk about? Wow, that's a skeleton.
Yeah,
I've
that's
seen one.
not really it's not really a skeleton. I was just like, oh, this probably makes most sense in black white. I'll just put the cards there, but like whatever. It's not really a thing.
So do you think that there is a Gerbil deck? As this
I mean-
skeleton, as for those that are listening, 7 cards.
I mean, I guess like
And 2 of them are
mostly-
Gerbills.
Mostly, like what do you want to pair gerbils with? You want to pair gerbils with like the things that you like actually want to gift a lot for, and like most of that, like I just noted that the black and white black and white gift spells were most often like things you wanted to gift, and also work well with gerbils. Like, you know, you're fine gifting on your your 5-mana draw 3. You know, giving them a fish to tap a thing, that's usually an okay trade for you to do. Except that, like, it doesn't. The benefit you get from drawing an extra card there isn't as good compared to the benefit on like removing something, right? Like definitely the best card to go with gerbils, I think, is the black removal spell, because it's just like, you know, you play your 2-mana 2/3, and then you give them a food and kill their creature and draw a card. You know, that's just very good rate. But I don't know. Seems like there's not that much stuff to do with it.
I know it's a rare, but what are your thoughts on the Thoughtseize from the set, the black Thoughtseize that you can gift opponent a card?
I mean, obviously, it gets better if you draw a card as well.
That card's
I
like
think that
kind of
card's pretty good.
yeah.
So what is the worst gift that you can give? A card? The food is the worst gift, no?
Or like the least useful.
Treasure?
Food is generally the least useful.
I mean, treasure in the late game, I guess, and food in the early game.
Yeah, like, to be clear, if you're looking to be a gerbils deck, you like food is definitely the best thing you can gift, because like if you're playing gerbils, you probably want the game to go longer, and like you're not being that aggressive. So like if they have some extra life, whatever.
So do you want to play the Dewdrop Cure if you play gerbils, because it can bring back your gerbils, but at the same time, if you already have gerbils,
you still need to like get 3 things in order to like gift that. You know, it's very hard.
But we already know that you mill yourself with the.
That's a good point. I start with half of my library in my graveyard. Okay, that makes me more excited.
No, the 2-mana spell that mills
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm playing 4 cash grabs, I start with half of my library in my graveyard.
Yeah, there you go. Now I think we came up that gerbils are basically a threshold creature. Let's go to my Abzan Builder's Talent deck.
Oh, I also have a Builder's Talent deck. We should look at both of them. Builder's Talent deserves this much scrutiny, definitely.
That's true, because it's the only time we'll see it in our drafts.
I think there's merit.
Hey, I mean, during early access, they'll probably wheel, so you can build around it.
I think that there is merit to it. I just don't think that it will ever come together. Okay, so I started it from theory crafting point of view. I wanted to build something with Builder's Talent, 2-mana talent, so class. You start with an 0-4 wall, which already puts me up. I don't want to play super aggressively because 0-4 wall is not necessarily aggressive. For 1 mana, you can level it up, which is relatively cheap. And then whenever one or more non-creature, non-land permanents you control enter, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So that's relatively cheap to activate. You can always squeeze in 1 mana in your turn cycles, and whenever the non-creature, non-land permanents enter, you get the +1/+1 counter on the creature. So I started looking at what non-creature, non-land permanents you have. First thing that struck me is Fountainport Bell, which is the thing that puts a land on top of the library, and is an artifact, and you can sacrifice it for 1 mana to draw a card. So sort of weird version of tap land that allows you to fix quite efficiently, which already puts me, I'm not restricted to playing 3 colors. Second thing that I looked at that looked neat was stocking the pantry, which I thought potentially is a build around, but how to build it around when there is not so many sources of putting counters on the creatures when I looked at it individually. But then I see it, okay, Builder's Talent put counters. Stocking Pantry wants me to put counters on creatures because every time I put a counter on a creature, I get a, what is it? A supply counter? A supply counter, and I can pay 2 mana to remove supply counters to draw a card. So basically, every supply counter is like a clue. Stocking the Pantry makes a clue every time I put a counter on something, which is great. And it might put a counter on something when I have Builder's Talent in game. So that was the one card. Third chapter or third level of Builder's Talent is being able to reanimate a non-creature, non-land permanent from your graveyard. So that brought me to another card I included in my deck, Bumbleflower's Shareport, which is a common, and it's 2 mana, and when it enters, you get a foot token, another non-land, non-creature permanent. So this, if I have Builder's Talent, triggers the +1/+1 counter synergy twice in one turn, which is neat. And for 5 mana, tap and sacrifice it, I can destroy target non-land permanent, activate only as a sorcery. Because I sacrifice it, I get it into graveyard, so this is potentially the thing I can reanimate with my Builder's Talent late in the game when I have a lot of mana but nothing else to do. So yeah, these were like the basic things I put in my deck. Also, Heaped Harvest, because it's another non-land, non-creature permanent that allows me to ramp, fix, and this deck potentially is quite mana hungry. And one other card I put into it is Tangle Tumbler. That's a vehicle, which is a non-creature, non-land permanent. It's a 3 mana 6/6 vehicle with vigilance. I can pay 3 mana and tap to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, so that furthers my counter synergy. But also I can tap 2 untapped tokens I control, and this becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Now, obviously, I am not playing too many counter things in terms of creatures, but I do play quite a lot of things that make food. There's Savor, there is the Popatch formation. So I can use those things, and obviously there's the Bumbleflower's Shareport. I can use those things to activate my Tangle Tumbler, and if not, it still is sort of like a clunky artifact that can put counters on something that will let me later to use my Stocking the Pantry, and it's generally nicely synergistic. On top of that, I have Sonar Strikes and Banishing Lights as my removal. I just put them because, first of all, Sonar Strike is something I'm interested in this deck because I'm playing a defensive game, so I don't mind multiple drawbacks that it has in the aggressive decks. But another reason why I have it is because my sort of aggressive package, and I use the word aggressive very loosely, are bats in quite a large amount. I have the Waxwayne Witness, that's the 2/4 vigilance flying creature that gets +1/+0 every time I gain a life. And I don't plan to gain life a lot of times, but putting counters on a 2/4 vigilance flyer seems like a good idea because I can do my attacking while I'll still having a decent blocker left behind. Another creature I put in this package is the Starseer Mentor. That's the 3/5 vigilance flying bat. And again, putting counters on this thing looks like a good idea. Another creature I like to put counters on is this Shrike Force. This one is flying, double strike, and vigilance. Again, I can do quite a substantial amounts of damage if I start putting counters on this while still maintaining a good defensive speed. I also have Baker's Bane Duo. That's the 2-mana 2/2 that makes a food when it ETBs and has some minor bonuses when I expand 4, which should be relatively easy with this deck. I have the Brightblade Stout, the Weasel with First Strike and Lifelink. Again, another card that takes counters quite well. So just as examples of things you can do, but I think that you can put many things on into that deck without big loss. I just showcase what I was interested in. I also have Treetop Sentinels. That's a 2/4 with reach, another defensive creature that I can boost the size quite easily, and I can forage as it ETBs to draw a card. So I can, for example, play turn 3 Heaped Harvest, and then turn 4 I can sacrifice Heaped Harvest to ramp again and draw a card. So I build up this early game and put like a big obstacle in front of my opponent. And the bomb I selected was Lumra, Bellow of the Woods. That's a 6-mana XX that gets big because I'm ramping with lands mainly. I think it would be useful. And it has some other abilities that might come relevant, including milling, which might put my non-land, non-creature permanent into the graveyard that I can reanimate later with the Builder's Talent. And again, if this particular deck would be slightly heavier on the squirrels, I could easily also play the cash grab to mill things and fill my graveyard for the Builder's Talent. So that's the sort of like philosophy I have for playing this deck. And this is my Golgari deck, by the way. It has 3 black cards.
I think the 3/2 that forages to get a permanent back would be pretty good here. I don't know.
Yeah. I had that in the version. I just trimmed it at the end because I wanted to showcase more the bat package and Sonar Strike package. But if I had different removal, I could easily swap those for bats and yeah. Any ideas, or shall we go to the Jason's version of the Builder's Talent deck? And
I mean, my version is somewhat similar. The main difference is that I'm focused a bit more on stocking the pantry, and of course, I am playing cash grab.
Of course, that goes without saying.
Yeah, because like you want non-creature non-land permanents in your graveyard to reanimate, and like that's a way to do that. Yeah.
Where is?
Do you think you ever want like the +2/+2 that gives one of your creatures indestructible if you give them a food for this kind of deck, just to like protect something with a bunch of counters on it?
Nah. Okay, so specifically, for this deck, I really wanted to build more around stocking the pantry, and the 2 cards that. So first of all, I have 2 copies. I think that it's not a card that many people will want. So like probably you can get that many. And the 2 cards that I really so obviously Builder's Talent is really nice with it. But like there's also the Green Village, which notably puts counters on creatures that enter, and that will put more counters on your stocking the pantry as well. And there's the Forage hybrid card, the one Golgari card, which can pretty easily get like a +1/+1 counter every turn, right? if not more, and that like also stocks up your pantry. Other notable combos, there's the Green Village plus Hop to it, and notably, Pantry says, I believe if you put counters on 3 things at the same time, you get 3 pantry counters, because I think it says like whenever 1 or more counters are put on a creature.
Yeah, you will get 3 counters from that.
Yeah, so things like that are pretty nice for Pantry. Bushy Bodyguard's also very nice for Pantry. So is the 1 mana 0/3. That's pretty good with Pantry. Yeah.
It is similar but different. And I see that how it's mine is more focusing on being able to reanimate non-creature, non-land. Yours is more I'm want to draw cards from the pantries. But yeah, I think it's a sweet build around. I have no idea if it's remotely functional.
This is also a perfect place for a Carrot Cake plus the plus Forge stuff, which is pretty strong. Like if you get to just play a turn 2 Carrot Cake and then turn 3 like the Forge 2/3, you get your Raise the Alarm with 2 Scry 1s, plus you get your 3/4, and like I don't know, it's just like a nice package of value that also works with Builder's Talent, because the Carrot Cake, is a non-creature, and it also works with your your Oak Hollow Villages. Is that what it's called? Yeah. Because your Carrot Cake makes multiple creatures, so
Carrot Cake works pretty well with the Tangle Tumbler too.
Yeah, there's like some nice glue,
Okay.
Can I mention just a couple of rares, Sirkovitz, that I think would fit in this shell? One of them is the other white talent, the Caretaker's Talent, which is drawing a card once a turn when tokens are entering. And then for 1 mana is creating a copy of target token. And then your creature tokens are getting +2/+2. So if you're including any creature tokens at all, even though that's not your main trigger for your Builder's Talent, that's going to synergize really well here. And then the other one is a rare that I can't imagine any other shell wanting, which is for the common good, the XX green that makes a bunch of tokens, which if you have especially multiple Builder's Talents on the board, is going to grow things to quite a size with the playing of 1 card. And then your tokens are also indestructible, and you're gaining life for every token you control, which in your case is thousands. So those are 2 rares that I think, especially the second of those, might not have any other significant home in this format, but they might have a home here.
Yeah, I was also thinking about in my particular build with Abzan, there is the white and black enchantment that lets you pay life to draw cards, and sometimes you will get bad tokens. And I thought that this would be cute because the flying tokens getting counters is also something that is pretty neat. I didn't put it eventually because of the limitations of the skeletons, but all those kinds of cards I think are pretty flexible, and as long as you keep the shell of being able to get the Builder's Talents and stocking the pantries, I think that you might be onto something if it comes together, if you have enough defensive speed. I mean, obviously Jason doesn't think removal is in any way important.
Block.
It'll work.
Yeah, so I mean, this is it's got a bunch of frogs in it. It's got some cheap ETBs that you can bounce. Ways to take advantage of your ETBs, some cheap removal. This is probably like a good spot for Runaway Together in particular, because you've got like good things to bounce. Gets you some tempo back, and like
you can put 2 copies of each common.
Yeah, I do. But I wanted to highlight some of the undervalued ones as well. And this is probably like a good home for like 3 Tree Scribe. Like you're really gonna get a lot of counters, I think, pretty quickly off of this. And then you've got like a bunch of good ETBs, like ways to bounce them, ways to blink them, like long River Lurker and stuff. And you can return like a Rush Shield Rampager to your hand and like pay the Offspring cost again if you want.
Yeah, so Rush Shield Rampager is a 4/4. It has offspring for 2, and creature can be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Long River Lurker is a 3-mana 2/3 frog with ward 1. Other frogs have ward 1. And when it enters, target creature you control can be blocked this turn. And whenever it deals damage this turn, you may exile it, and basically you can blink it. So you give unblockability something, then you can blink it. You can accrue some extra value.
Yeah. Plus, you can also kill people by like Lily slash mentoring your Long River Lurker a bunch of times.
Yeah, there's plenty. This is going to be such a moving parts deck, but I think that it might get there because it doesn't really require this A plus B synergies. It's just like everything blinks and everything has an ETB, so you're sort of like partially immune to the big problem that those decks sometimes have.
Yeah, it's just like if you're kind of draft this, you definitely want to take like the good on rate cards before you take something like Long River Lurker, I would imagine.
Yeah, I like the Splash Lasher.
Yep, that's a good one to blink or bounce.
It's a 4-mana 3/3. Excellent, right? It has offspring. Weirdly for blue mana, so it stops people from stealing it from you. You need to be heavy blue to play it, really. And when it enters, you tap up to 1 creature and put a stun counter on it. So obviously the offspring also has that ability. So you either tap 2 things and put stun counters on it, or tap 1 thing and put 2 stun counters on it.
Yep, a very strong card, I think.
Yeah, it looks really solid. Like this is the stabilizer for this is the honey mammoth basically. Because stunning
also,
2 things is as good as gaining 4 life.
Also, Long River Lurker plus Treetop Sentries is like a good way to deal a bunch of damage like later in the game.
Treetop Sentries is
Oh wait, no, not that
no,
one.
no.
I don't think I put that in here, but I was thinking.
No, you mean the squirrel
the 3/4
frog or whatever, and it's not the squirrel frog. It's raccoon frog.
I think it's a rabbit.
Rabbit frog. Yeah, it is a rabbit frog. Yeah, it gives +X on ETB, where X is the number of creatures you control, and vigilance. So yeah, preferably you want to put it on something with evasion / trample.
Yeah, or you can blink your Long River Lurker, and your whatever that card's called, like a bunch of times, and kill them like in probably 2 or 3 hits.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely moving parts, and yeah, again, I think I really like the Mind Spiler in those decks because you'll be mana hungry, but you also be card hungry, and despite blinking all the things, you want to dig into your moving pieces in the end.
I need to draw all my moving parts for it to work, right?
Any other thoughts on the Simic? Is Simic going to be okay in this format? What do you think?
I think it might be. The interaction's pretty good and cheap, and like the other good thing is that Simic's cheap creatures I think are also like pretty solid.
Green will be good in this format.
Green will be good. That's true.
Yep. I
think
that
this deck is mostly
blue is
green
good
color,
enough to support. So. It has like nice pieces of support here and there peppered in. You don't need to be heavy on it.
This deck is mostly green cards, I think. There aren't that many blue cards in it.
Let's move to the last thing, and that's mice.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure where there are 21 cards. I think there somehow duplicates made their way out of here. I had a couple of guard mouses in, and duplicating a couple of the common mice. But anyway, one of the things that I struggled with here is that I think it's going to be difficult for more than one drafter to get a sufficient number of 1s and 2s at common to make this work. I'm going to love to play this deck. This kind of deck is right up my alley as far as, Boros that has a plan past turn 4 because things are just getting bigger. It's not just go wide and hope. And but even when just putting the skeleton together, it was like, well, I can find a lot of uncommons that I want, but there's just not that many commons that I want at those low costs that are creatures. I put Might of the Meek and Warsqueak in there, one of each, and I'm really interested to see which of those 2 is going to play better with this shell, because even though you have the land that can potentially give haste, the nice thing about Warsqueak is it's continually activating Valiant. So, you know, it's almost functioning like an equipment, and the unblockability may really play a role. So anyway, there's lots of ways to pump the mice, but one of the reasons that I chose the rears that I did is I wanted some permanence to that. Not just like it's going to buff it once, or you're putting counters places and they blow that up and then that's the end of that. So I think you're going to have plenty of removal available to you in white and red for this kind of a deck. But yeah, I think the big question is going to be, can you get the density of 1s and 2s, especially at common, to be able to build it?
Yeah, I also think that the short sword is a shoe-in for this deck. Oh, short bow, sorry, not short sword.
Yeah, Blacksmith's Talent might not even be like that bad here.
Because yeah, you definitely want to, you know, later in the game you have like 3 Valiant mice. You equip each one of them. You trigger the Valiant for each one of them, and then you leave it on the ones that you want to leave it on, and swing. And I think that's going to be such an important part. Also, another one that is neat is the Brave King Duo, the 1 mana 1/1 that you can pay 1 and tap to get +1/+1 to something, because that way you will be able to get those bigger creatures in the end.
Yeah, I mean, the main way that I want to be triggering the mice is the +1/+0 to all mice. I want that to be triggering as much. I want as many of those as I possibly can, because then I can just trigger the entire field all at once. The Bravekin Duo, I had two in this build initially, and I took one out because I just really didn't like having 2 creatures that are going to be spending most of their time not attacking. One I'm okay with, you know, trigger the one thing that I really want to trigger this turn, and I don't have another way to do that. But boy, anything that can trigger things more than once. Mabel's Metal is so important for this deck. You know, trigger 2 things. I would like several copies of that if I'm playing this shell. Rabbit Response is obviously, you know, somewhat interchangeable for the Red Anthem. I probably want the Red Anthem more, but I put Rabbit Response here because I think you're slightly more likely to see more copies and get more copies of that.
By Red Anthem, you mean the Trumpet Blast?
Yeah, the Trumpet
Yeah,
Blast.
yeah.
Yeah, that also can target, so
Yeah.
at least one creature if you gift treasure. Is it
I think it's a fish.
fish? Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
the ability of targeting is, I think, is important there. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I definitely think that the cards like the Heartfire Hero, like the Seedglaive Mentor that get permanent boosts from being targeted are so important for this deck to be able to compete with things that eventually will put bigger things on board, because they grow as the game scales. The more you can grow them, the better.
I think the really cool thing about this design and this mechanic is the fact that they're making mice to strike above their weight class, like that, and it. I mean, you can consistently get that to happen, which is, I think, is really key to this deck succeeding.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's also very much on the flavor of Red Wool. Look, we did it.
One last
Skeleton
comment.
Crew.
Can we
Go
talk about how Rabbit Response, every single time I hear that name, I'm like, oh, it's the deal 3, right? That's a response.
Yeah, swift response, remembering.
As opposed to, why is your response the anthem? I don't get it.
I have no idea.
It's an instant. It's for when you play it on defense.
Yeah, I'm beaten by most of the nomenclature in this set, so that's fine. Because I still have to wake up for an 8:00 meeting, and I'm after the 72-hour proposal completion marathon. So let's end it here. Soon we're going to get the cards in our paws. I just saw on Discord that the emails should be coming in our way for the early streamer access tomorrow. So hopefully we can test some of our hypotheses. I definitely expanded my brain through that. Big discovery is the non-flying frog that gets flying in the blue-white deck is something I'm definitely going to try to play.
I I mean, for
And-
me, stocking the pantry and the builder's class is now something I'm going to try to force tomorrow. So
That's why I hate myself for releasing it into the wilderness, because I could have easily tried it when no one cared. And, Content-
Hey. There are
content
plenty of
creation.
arena drafters, you know.
that is true, but LSV is going to be there, and if there is one player that will be keen on stocking the pantry, that's the one.
Are you sure?
I
Is
think
that
he's going to
LSV?
force blue-red almost.
I meant literally, not in cards.
That's true.
I mean, he always wins the hungriest host, doesn't he? Okay. So yeah, hopefully you, the viewers, also managed to get insights and sort of put this format together in your head and get some kind of an aha moment or epiphany. So yeah, thanks you all for joining. Next week we're going to have, well, probably I'm going to have the super early data dive next week, somewhere Thursday, Friday, and thank you, my guests. Where can we find you, and why should we find you there? Maybe let's start with Trezio, because he's the newcomer.
I'm on Twitter, X, whatever, is Tresio. I don't currently stream. I sometimes randomly appear on someone else's, but thank you for allowing me to be here today. I really enjoyed participating.
No problem. Of course, you can find Trezio in my Discord. That's definitely where you can find them chatting about what's going on, posting trophies / helping people build their decks. So that's nice. Springbok.
You can find me at twitch.tv/Springbox7. I'm going to be streaming early access tomorrow, among many other people. So if you've got some time, stop by. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
And apart from Pro Tour Top 8, where can we find you, Jason?
Hopefully at the world's top 8. No. You can find me at JasonILTG basically everywhere. I will be streaming early access tomorrow, unless something goes really wrong. But yeah, pleasure being on as always.
Experimental synthesizer.
Oh yes, I should write more articles. I've been kind of lagging on that, but yes, you can find my articles at experimentalsynthesizers.blog. I don't know how many articles I'll write about this set, because I'm not that interested.
Well, I mean, even though there's a new standard coming, I'm eagerly awaiting for the new version of Slogurk without the Slogurk.
Slogurk and Pioneer, come on. No, but the standard is old news. It's RCQ
I did buy a
season.
playset, so I'm
Oh,
ready.
I guess it's already past RCQ season. It's RCDC season.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for all of you, and yep, I'll see you next week with the new magic numbers.